Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
In the wake of first son Hunter Biden's guilty verdict, we hear from Americans for their take on the conviction.
Israel says around 90 missiles were launched at it from Lebanon, and Secretary of State Antony Blinken speaks about his meeting with the Qatari Prime Minister.
A former soldier as well as an ex-NASCAR driver are just a couple of the candidates as residents in 4 states cast their ballots in primaries.
A vote to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress is expected today on the House floor. That's after he refused to turn over audio related to President Biden's handling of classified documents.
A gunman shoots 3 people at an Atlanta mall before police shoot him. Find out what witnesses saw during the chaos at the mall's food court.
Lawmakers probe the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and the agency's ability to ensure the safety and soundness of the U.S. banking system.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Hi, I'm Kevin Hogan sitting in for Chris Beers.
And to begin the show, a federal jury convicted Hunter Biden on all 3 federal felony gun charges yesterday. They deliberated for about 3 hours.
Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards has more details.
After less than 4 hours of deliberations, a Delaware jury found the president's son, Hunter Biden, guilty of 3 felony gun charges. The younger Biden has been found guilty of 2 counts of making false statements. This relates to his answer of no on a mandatory gun registration form to the question of whether or not he was addicted to or taking illegal drugs. The 3rd count was possessing a firearm while addicted to drugs. Hunter Biden had pleaded not guilty to all charges, but the jury decided that he knew he was addicted to crack cocaine when he completed that form, and that he continued to use illegal drugs in the days after he purchased the gun. The first son faces up to 25 years in prison and up to a $750,000 fine. He likely will not receive the maximum sentence as a first-time offender. The judge will decide whether or not he gets prison time after a sentencing hearing that hasn't been scheduled yet. Here's what Special Counsel David Weiss said.
No one in this country is above the law. Everyone must be accountable for their actions, even this defendant. However, Hunter Biden should be no more accountable than any other citizen convicted of this same conduct.
The first son showed no emotion as the verdict was read. He said in a statement, "I am more grateful today for the love and support I experienced this last week from Melissa, my family, my friends, and my community than I am disappointed by the outcome." President Biden was set to address gun safety at an annual conference hours after his son was convicted. He said in a statement, "Jill and I love our son, and we are so proud of the man he is today." Former President Trump's campaign said in a statement, "This trial has been nothing more than a distraction from the real crimes," referring to accusations made by the House Oversight Committee that the Biden family has received millions of dollars from foreign countries. House Speaker Mike Johnson also weighed in. He said the verdict was appropriate. Comparing the outcome to the Trump business records case, he said every case is different, and clearly the evidence was overwhelming here. I don't think that's the case in the Trump trial.
Hours after Hunter Biden was convicted on gun charges, President Biden spoke on gun restriction measures at a previously scheduled event in Washington. And today the president is set to leave for Italy to attend the G7 summit. NTD's Iris Tao has more from Bari, Italy.
And President Biden, addressing survivors of gun-related violence, highlights his administration's work on gun control.
Whether we're Democrats or Republicans, we want our families to be safe. We all want to drop them off at a house of worship, a mall, a movie theater, a school, without worrying it's the last time I'm going to get to see them.
The speech comes just hours after his son Hunter Biden was found guilty on gun charges. Biden did not address the verdict in the speech, but issued a statement saying he will accept the outcome of this case and that he's proud of his son for his recovery from addiction. Last week, Biden said he would not pardon his son if he's found guilty. Biden's Tuesday speech on guns was previously scheduled, and it comes as Biden's campaign is ramping up its messaging on the issue to target Biden's 2024 rival.
And by doing nothing, he made the situation considerably worse.
Former President Trump has vowed to roll back Biden's gun rules, saying,
but the Second Amendment will be, it's under siege. But with me, they never get anywhere.
And Trump's campaign on Tuesday linked Hunter's conviction to Biden's presidency. After Hunter's conviction, Biden changed his schedule and returned to Delaware. And this morning, Biden is still scheduled to fly out for the G7 summit here in Italy. The White House told us he would talk with G7 leaders about democracy, ally support for Ukraine, and China support for Russia. Reporting from Bari, Italy, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Joining us to discuss is former Representative Congressman Bob Barr, attorney and Vice President of the National Rifle Association. Welcome. Good to have you with us, Congressman.
Good morning. I was recently elected and now serve as the president of the National Rifle Association.
Oh, congratulations. All right. Good to note. Now, Congressman Barr, what can we expect next in this case in terms of sentencing in Hunter Biden's case? That is, what kind of sentence is usually given for offenses like this?
It's, I think, highly unlikely that the president's son would receive a jail sentence in this case. There will be a period in which his background will be reviewed, people will be interviewed, he will be interviewed, and then once the judge sets a date for the sentencing, probably in a couple of months, he would be sentenced probably to a lengthy term of probation and a fine. But again, I'd be surprised if he were to receive jail time for an offense such as this.
And do you think that it could potentially impact his other tax evasion case that's coming up? The fact that he is convicted?
I don't think so. The federal government is very good at keeping different cases in the right lane. The case in which he was just convicted really doesn't have anything, I don't think, even tangentially to the tax evasion case. Now, of course, if Mr. Biden, Hunter Biden, that is, were to take the stand in his defense in the tax evasion case, then that would open up anything relating to his background in terms of credibility and so forth. But absent that, I don't think that this case would affect the tax case.
Okay. Now, legal analysts have said that Hunter Biden can appeal on Second Amendment grounds in this case. Tell us more about that and how it relates to what's called the Bruin test.
It's a very interesting question. The Bruin case from 2022 is a very far-reaching decision by the Supreme Court that said basically in considering restrictions on the Second Amendment, those restrictions have to be gauged against the intent of the Second Amendment at the time that it was adopted back in the 18th century. So, for example, if a gun control measure today is legislated or justified because it improves public safety, that is not an appropriate ground on which to assess or impose a limit. The question here is, though, a little more subtle, and that is the difference between one of the questions on the questionnaire that Mr. Biden answered, and that is whether or not you've been declared mentally defective or been in a mental institution, which, if that were the case, probably would withstand constitutional challenge because there were restrictions and discussions about mentally disturbed people and firearms back in the 18th century and before. But with regard to the question that he falsely answered about being addicted to or an unlawful user of narcotics or other controlled substances, that's something that really doesn't have a precise, clawback to the history here. So even though these restrictions on the so-called Form 4473 have been found generally acceptable constitutionally. In terms of the Bruin test, if this case were to reach the Supreme Court, it could be a very interesting one and could change that particular part of the federal restriction.
Right. So what could that mean for Second Amendment rights more generally?
It would mean, for example, depending on how the court were to rule, that if cases involving marijuana users who are lawful users under state law or for medicinal purposes, that it would be very difficult to sustain a limitation or a prohibition on their use of a firearm. Again, I kind of hope that he does appeal this because it's an issue that has not squarely come before the court after the 2022 Bruin decision.
Okay, and yesterday President Biden gave a speech advocating for tighter gun control. Now, gun control and the Second Amendment can be a very polarizing topic, of course, with both sides of the argument feeling very passionate about it. When talking about gun violence and what to do about it, what do you think is often missing from the conversation?
What's missing from the conversation, and what this president and his predecessor Democrat presidents always bring up when they talk about gun control, misses the point. The public discussion, the public policy ought to be about crime control, not gun control. What we have in this country is a disintegration of the civil bonds in our society, such that violence, including violence with firearms, is far too great and has to be addressed by swift, consistent prosecution and incarceration of individuals who commit crimes, especially with firearms. So that's where the emphasis ought to be, not on this vague notion of gun control that the Democrats keep throwing out there.
And just lastly, Congressman, what do you think proponents of control of gun control misunderstand about the Second Amendment advocates' position, and how can we reach a greater understanding between the two sides?
What's missing oftentimes is simply a basic reading and understanding of the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court back in 2008 made very clear in the so-called Heller decision that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to keep and bear arms. And the fact of the matter is, that is precisely what the amendment was intended to do. Very similar, for example, to the First Amendment, which protects individual rights to worship and to speak. So if gun control advocates would simply step back a moment and consider that the Second Amendment, like the other provisions in the Bill of Rights, apply to individual rights, I think that would make the public policy debate far more relevant and meaningful.
All right, Congressman Bob Barr, attorney and president of the National Rifle Association. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And continuing with Hunter Biden's conviction, here are some reactions in New York City to the guilty verdict.
I believe that he probably was guilty of the charges because being the president's son wasn't blown out of proportion, quite possibly. But at the end of the day, he did do the crime, and so you got to be held accountable for that.
I don't think that political candidates should get off the hook just because they're in politics.
When it comes to Joe Biden's son, was there an opportunity to pursue this case maybe beyond what normally would have occurred? Maybe so, because of what's been going on both sides of the political aisle. Was Hunter Biden guilty? Based on what I read, what I saw, sure, he was guilty.
In international affairs, Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets with the Qatari Prime Minister. Blinken discussed the Hamas terror group and its reaction to a recent ceasefire proposal after the meeting.
A deal was on the table that was virtually identical to the proposal that Hamas put forward on May the 6th. A deal that the entire world is behind, a deal Israel's accepted, and Hamas could have answered with a single word: yes.
More on the Middle East conflict. The Israeli military said Wednesday that about 90 missiles were fired from Lebanon toward its northern territory. It says fires were sparked in a number of areas.
The IDF says some of the missiles were intercepted while others fell in several locations in northern Israel.
And a United Nations inquiry says both Israel and Hamas committed war crimes since the war in Gaza started. The report accuses both sides routinely disregarding international law.
Meanwhile, Israel accuses the UN inquiry of anti-Israel discrimination and attempting to justify the October 7th attacks.
Coming up, 8 foreign nationals reportedly arrested linked to ISIS in New York, Philadelphia, and LA. They were caught crossing the border illegally and released into the U.S. We have more on the immigration crisis.
Democrats want a Supreme Court ethics law. Some top Republicans oppose it. More on the bill Democrats are expected to try to advance today when we come back.
I had a pretty normal mom life. Everything was pretty good, and it was a very happy life.
And we just had a new baby. And then all of a sudden, within a day or two, she's on life support and fighting for her life.
Then I knew something was pretty wrong. A little less than a week after I came home, I couldn't breathe. That's when we decided to go to the hospital. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
This could not happen without monthly donations from friends like you. Your sustained support helps fund life-saving research that leads to medical breakthroughs, like those that gave Jen a second chance at life. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America, and we urgently need your help to save lives. Go to helpheart.org or call now to become a monthly donor today. Your donation of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, will make a difference through prevention, early detection, treatments, and cures that help save lives.
I am very thankful for the American Heart Association. I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children.
Please go to helpheart.org or call now with your donation of just $19 a month. Join our community of monthly donors, and you'll get this limited edition t-shirt you could wear to show you're helping save lives.
One simple act today can save your life or the life of a loved one.
Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org. Become a monthly donor today, and your first month's gift will be matched.
My dad's name was David. He always talked about getting life insurance, and now it's too late.
No one was expecting my husband Dave to suffer from a heart attack. We didn't have life insurance. We thought we had more time.
Don't be Dave, and don't wait until it's too late to get the life insurance coverage you need. And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Call now to get affordable life insurance.
Just call
800-494-1562.
If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam, no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Remember, don't be Dave. Call now.
Call now.
800-494-1562.
New data out today shows inflation cooled more than expected in May. The federal government reports consumer prices rose 3.3% from a year earlier. That's a bit slower rate than in April.
The Consumer Price Index report reveals that on a month-to-month basis, prices were flat. That was also a slower pace from April's gain of 0.3%.
It's the first time in nearly 2 years that the Consumer Price Index did not rise on a monthly basis. Falling gas prices are helping to slow inflation.
Excluding gasoline and food, the core measure rose just 0.2% for the month. That's its slowest pace since October of last year. A busy day for democracy as 4 states hold primaries and 1 state has a special election. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the highlights.
South Carolina, Nevada, North Dakota, and Maine all held primaries on Tuesday, while Ohio held a special election for a vacated congressional seat. In South Carolina, Representative Nancy Mace won the Republican nomination. Mace defeated challengers Catherine Templeton and Bill Young. Mace was endorsed by former President Donald Trump. The Congresswoman is a regular on interview shows, where she has called for her party to moderate on abortion and marijuana. She received criticism for joining 7 conservative members to oust former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. In Nevada, Republican Sam Brown overcame a crowded field of primary opponents to win Nevada's GOP U.S. Senate primary. That sets up a fierce general election battle against incumbent Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen that could decide which party controls the U.S. Senate. Brown, who was nearly killed by a roadside bomb in Afghanistan that scarred his face, made military service central to his message this campaign cycle. Brown was endorsed by former President Trump on Sunday, further boosting the Republican who far outpaced his opponents in fundraising. In North Dakota, Representative Kelly Armstrong won Tuesday's Republican primary for governor of the state. Armstrong currently occupies North Dakota's lone House seat. The Trump-endorsed candidate beat Lieutenant Governor Tammy Miller in the race to succeed Republican Governor Doug Burgum. Burgum did not seek a third term and is under consideration to be former President Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate. Over to Maine, where former NASCAR driver and current state lawmaker Austin Theriault defeated fellow Maine House member Mike Sobolewski. Theriault will face 3-term incumbent Democratic Congressman Jared Golden in Maine's 2nd congressional district. The district is the site of a shooting that killed 18 in Lewiston in October. And finally over to Ohio, where Republican State Senator Michael Rulli won a special election Tuesday for a U.S. House seat that has sat vacant for months. The victory expands the GOP's narrow majority in the congressional chamber. Rulli defeated Democrat Michael Kripchak to fill the remainder of Republican Bill Johnson's unexpired term. Kripchak served in the Air Force and has done stints as an actor. He currently works at a local restaurant. The two face off again November 5th for a full 2-year congressional term that begins in January. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Federal Election Commission expects artificial intelligence to threaten the integrity of our elections ahead of November.
Agency and government leaders have growing concerns that AI-generated content, such as deepfakes, could mislead voters.
NTD's Andrew Thomas speaks with an AI specialist to learn more about the potential risks.
The Federal Election Commission is sounding the alarm on artificial intelligence. Technologist Alexander de Ritter says the threat of AI interfering in our electoral process is multifaceted. He cites AI's ability to copy a candidate's voice.
With just a number of seconds of someone's voice, you can create credible AI clones. And so if you get a phone call from a politician or what sounds like a politician, do not immediately believe it just because it sounds like that politician.
AI is evolving so rapidly that it's starting to learn how users feel, and those feelings can be manipulated.
Artificial intelligence has gotten more emotionally aware. So in the last year, we have seen artificial intelligence that can pick up on a voice emotion in a conversation and adapt its responses based on that. And so that yields for more persuasive, human-like conversations.
Mis and disinformation were a huge concern during the 2020 presidential race. But is seeing really believing anymore?
AI can now generate persuasive video. And it is not perfect. You can definitely still tell that it is AI generated. But it feels like we're just like one innovation away from it crossing the uncanny valley, where it becomes really hard to distinguish.
De Ritter explains that AI also poses a more direct threat to our elections.
You can now have AI look for vulnerabilities in code that previously humans might have not found. So that means AI can more quickly find issues with election systems and basically all the software and hardware that underpins our election system.
AI could also undermine confidence in the electoral process itself.
Even if AI was not used to manipulate hard votes, then it can still be used to undermine faith in the outcome of our elections. And so if the public does not believe the elections were fair, it can also undermine an election in a significant way.
De Ridder notes that the media has historically influenced American voters. He cites a study from Brigham Young University last year that looked at student media consumption.
What can voters do to determine what's true and what's not when they consider voting for the candidate of their choice?
This university did a study where they used AI to analyze media diets, including social media. And it turned out that this kind of diet, media diet we have, is a surprisingly good predictor of election outcomes. So in a way, they say you are what you eat.
A political consultant made news in January after he sent artificial intelligence-generated robocalls mimicking President Joe Biden's voice. He appeared in court last week to face charges of voter suppression and impersonating a candidate. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The House could vote on holding Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress as soon as today.
Yesterday, the House Rules Committee passed a resolution along party lines setting up a floor vote. The time of the vote will not be officially set until House Republicans release the schedule.
House Republicans are moving to hold Garland in contempt for refusing to turn over audio recordings of President Biden's interviews with former special counsel Robert Hur.
Hur investigated Biden's handling of classified material and declined to bring charges, partly due to Biden's mental state, he said. Biden has asserted executive privilege over the audio files, although the transcripts are not sealed. And Senate Democrats are set to push for Supreme Court ethics legislation today. Some lawmakers spoke about the bill at a roundtable discussion yesterday.
Court in the land today has the lowest ethical standards, and yet they are the only jurists in the federal system who are traditionally given the honorific justice.
Why was the threat of women having freedom powerful enough to bring down our whole system of judicial ethics and cripple one of the three co-equal branches of government?
Disclose what the facts are about what he knew about his wife's insurrection activities.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse introduced the Supreme Court Ethics Recusal and Transparency Act. It aims to enforce an ethics code for the Supreme Court, as we said.
Strong Republican opposition is expected to block the bill. The legislation calls for an enforceable ethics code, recusal processes, and a review panel for ethics complaints.
Republicans, including Senator Lindsey Graham, argue these efforts are purely partisan.
Despite anticipated obstruction, Democrats stress the importance of addressing Supreme Court ethics reforms.
And Atlanta police say one person was shot dead on a commuter bus that then led officers on a wild chase through the suburbs.
Police say the bus took off after officers responded to a report of gunfire and possible hostage situation. What followed was a long pursuit during a busy rush hour. The bus was eventually stopped in neighboring DeKalb County. Police took a 39-year-old male suspect into custody.
Inside the bus, officers found an adult with a gunshot wound who died at a hospital.
Authorities say a gunman shot 3 people at a food court in downtown Atlanta before a police officer then shot him.
I was coming out of the break room, and my manager pushed me back in and said, "Get down, get down, get down." Me and like 5 other coworkers. And we all holding each other, and shielding each other, making sure each other okay. Where it was so scary. My thoughts was I was never gonna make it home to my son, and that scared me. And my heart was beating so fast. My coworkers' heart was beating so fast. My managers, we closed the gates, we closed everything, everybody left.
A couple of us were still back, looking around the corner just to see what was going on. He was kind of scoping the place around to figure out who else to shoot. So then the police started coming in a bit by bit, and then that's where they let up with him there. He was on the ground, the police were surrounding him. He had it seemed as though they fired at him because he was on the ground, but his hand was kind of next to the gun, but it wasn't. So it was like they were just telling him to stay as he was. Going to the entrance where the pizza places and the Mexican restaurant, there was blood all over.
Police say all 4 people who were shot Tuesday afternoon at the Peachtree Center food court are expected to survive, including the suspect.
During a news conference, Mayor Andre Dickens praised the responding officer who wounded the gunman. He said things could have been much worse.
The Peachtree Center is a complex of office towers and an underground mall just blocks from several hotels that are popular venues for Atlanta's busy convention business. Immigration and Customs Enforcement have reportedly arrested 8 men from Tajikistan accused of having ties to ISIS. A senior DHS official told CBS the 8 were caught crossing the border illegally and released to appear in immigration court. The anonymous official said DHS didn't know about the ties to ISIS at the time of their release. They said authorities grew concerned about what they learned, in part through a wiretap.
The official told CBS there was no active terror plot. They said ICE agents detained the foreigners in New York, Philadelphia, and LA.
The officials said the 8 foreign nationals are now facing immigration charges. The New York Post was the first to report on the arrests.
New York City is cracking down on illegal gun trafficking. The latest accused offender is a 24-year-old who allegedly sold firearms from inside a prison cell. NTD's Fiona G. was at the announcement of the indictment.
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg announced the indictment of Hayden Espinoza, who has been accused of allegedly selling illegal firearms online and in his prison cell.
The indictment today against Hayden Espinoza, who we allege sold and attempted to sell weapons and gun parts to an undercover NYPD officer while he was in federal prison. As a result, he is charged in a New York State Supreme Court indictment.
The investigation against Espinoza began in 2022. Authorities say that he ran a Telegram chat called 3D Amendment, through which he was able to sell weapons parts that could be used to make ghost guns, which are guns without serial numbers that cannot be traced. Authorities say many of the buyers in the 3D Amendment chat were racially motivated. There was even a photo showing a man wearing a Nazi armband.
We see this sad and tragic combination far too often of the intersection of gun violence and gun trafficking and hate and extremism.
Officials were also able to link weapons used by the shooter in the 2022 Buffalo supermarket shooting to Espinoza's chat. According to authorities, many of the weapons parts that Espinoza sold were 3D printed, which they say is a growing threat in firearms dealing. Espinoza had already been detained and convicted and was serving a prison term in a federal prison in Louisiana, where he continued to sell firearms out of his prison cell, including to an undercover NYPD officer. After his prison term in Louisiana, Espinoza will be extradited back to New York at the end of this month for his hearing. Fiona G., NTD News.
NASA and Boeing are pushing back the return of the Starliner and its crew to June 18th. They say mission analysts are examining issues that could affect its return. Boeing's Starliner spacecraft was supposed to undock from the International Space Station Friday and return, but NASA officials say they're considering various factors, including fixing faulty components, weather conditions, and other operations.
A NASA blog post Monday said there was another helium leak. That's in addition to the 4 already found after its June 5th launch. They said there could be more changes to the schedule, but for now, they're targeting a June 18th return.
The spacecraft is expected to land in the desert of the New Mexico or Arizona or another predetermined location. A successful operation is crucial for NASA to certify the Starliner for routine space flights. And up ahead, at least 40 people are dead in the Middle East in Kuwait. That's after a fire broke out in a residential building. Kuwait's officials are commenting, blaming people involved.
Russian strikes on Ukraine's energy system have caused long-term damage and reduced the country's generating capacity by half. How residents are living without power when we return.
Water, nature's ultimate cleaner. We drink it, we bathe in it. Think water, think steam, think clean. Now harness the power of water with the H2O X5 5-in-1 steam cleaning system.
I'm so impressed with the X5.
It's an all-in-one product. I can use it throughout my entire house.
It's cleaning, it's sanitizing, there's no chemicals in it. It's just steam.
This is unbelievable. There is no more odor.
You could spend over $500 to purchase the products that the X5 5-in-1 Miracle replaces. Order your H2O X5 steam cleaning system, a $500 value, for just 4 easy payments of $43. Order now and we'll upgrade your X5 package. We'll add a 6th mode with a dusting and polishing wand. Valued at over $30, this extra bonus attachment makes your H2O X5 the H2O X6. That means your 10-piece system becomes a 12-piece system at no extra cost to you. All for just 3 easy payments of $43. Call or click right now.
Presenting the heritage of traditional Chinese martial arts, fostering martial ethics, and reviving the true tradition. Preliminaries of the 2024 NTD International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition will be held across Germany, Taiwan, and New York. The grand finals will be broadcast live online worldwide in September 2024. For more information, please call 1-888-477-9228.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50-enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Welcome back. At least 40 people are dead in Kuwait today after a fire broke out in a building which houses workers. The country's deputy prime minister visited the site.
Unfortunately, the greed of the property owners is what leads to these matters. I will call the director of municipalities, and we will talk to all property owners. Any property violation will be removed early morning.
Reports say scores of workers were living in the building. It's not clear yet which nationality the victims belong to.
Kuwait, like other Persian Gulf countries, has a large community of immigrant workers who far outnumber the local population.
The nation of some 4 million people is slightly smaller than the U.S. state of New Jersey, but it has the world's 6th largest known oil reserves. And Ukrainians are stocking up on supplies to make it through ever-increasing power outages. Russian strikes on the energy system have left the country with half its generating capacity and long-term damage to the system.
When the power goes out in Kyiv, Valery Takalich has to climb 12 flights of stairs to his apartment, carrying his 2-month-old baby instead of taking the lift. It's a regular occurrence for the city's 3 million people after Russia began pummeling the country's energy system in late March, cutting out half of its generating capacity. Authorities can warn residents of upcoming outages, giving them around 15 minutes to prepare.
Blackouts are the worst. Even the airstrikes, which we got used to and which present huge risks for the family, made worse by the presence of the baby, they bother me less than the blackouts do.
They cook with a small portable gas stove, but access to water to bathe their baby is difficult, as pumps need power to reach high apartments. The family are considering moving further west for a less disruptive life. Some Kyiv residents went without power for more than 5 hours a day last week due to deficits in the energy system, the longest outage since last winter. Artist Yevhen Klemenko normally works during the night, but has changed his habits to paint in the dawn light. He says it's a minor sacrifice compared to those closer to the front line.
We knew there would be no power. I want to buy lamps, power banks and batteries to have the minimum. Where there is a power cut, I turn on a lamp. It's better than doing nothing.
Local news broadcasts even continue on in the darkness. It's reminiscent of the winter of 2023. Streets are plunged into darkness, the hum of generators can be heard across Kyiv, and people carry flashlights to get around. Ukrainian authorities say Russia's spring attacks are causing long-term network damage that may mean power cuts for years to come. Kyiv has struggled to secure enough air defense systems from its Western allies to protect itself. Moscow says Ukraine's energy infrastructure is a legitimate military objective and denies targeting civilians. Thousands of Ukrainians have been killed in attacks on residential buildings, schools and hospitals since early 2022.
And now for shifting gears, we have some short headlines from France, Spain and other European countries. French President Emmanuel Macron says dissolving the parliament and announcing a snap election is the only way forward. That's after France's far right pummeled his own party in the EU Parliament election.
Macron is urging rival parties on both sides to join him in forging a democratic alliance against Marine Le Pen's right-wing party.
The president acknowledged making mistakes. He says the French had expressed their indignation but felt they were not being heard. Hungary has agreed to not block NATO from giving support to Ukraine, but the country won't provide any personnel or funds to help Kyiv.
At a summit in Washington next month, NATO members are expected to agree on a new system for providing more support to Ukraine.
NATO makes all its decisions by consensus, effectively giving all 32 allies the right to veto. Hungary previously opposed more aid for Ukraine. The European Union is reportedly proposing to sanction Russian oil shipping company Sovcomflot. That's in a move to limit the Kremlin's ability to finance its war against Ukraine. Bloomberg News reported on the plans, citing a document.
The move would follow similar measures imposed by the U.S. on the company earlier this year. Sovcomflot used to be one of the world's leading tanker operators.
It transported over 70 million tons of oil in 2023. That's mainly to the markets of China, India, and the Mediterranean. And heavy rains yesterday caused severe flooding in many parts of the Spanish island of Mallorca.
The inclement weather also left the island's airport soaking.
Several flights were grounded as a result. Footage showed puddles inside the building while roads were flooded outside the airport.
The heavy rain has stopped and no major injuries were reported.
A Polish climber was detained in Argentina as he attempted to scale one of the capital's tallest buildings. Marcin Bonneau was climbing the exterior of Buenos Aires' 30-story Globant tower without safety equipment.
Wearing an Argentina soccer jersey, Bonneau managed to climb 28 of the 30 floors of the tower in downtown Buenos Aires. The building is 410 feet high. He was intercepted by a rescue team, which put him in a safety harness and forced him down.
The Buenos Aires official says the climber is now in custody. He said he will ask the courts to sentence Bonneau to pay for the entire operation. The official said locals should not have to bear the cost of his, quote, recklessness.
Bonneau is well known for climbing urban landmarks such as the Montparnasse Tower in Paris and the Louis I Bridge in Portugal.
Whaling season in Iceland is underway, and the government yesterday issued a license to the last remaining whaling company. Animal rights activists are up in arms, including Hollywood celebrities.
The company will be allowed to haul in just under 130 fin whales throughout parts of Iceland and Greenland. An international moratorium was imposed in 1986 to protect the species from extinction. Despite the ban, Norway resumed commercial whaling in 1993 and Iceland in 2006. The majority of the whale meat is sold to Japan. A research expert on trade between Japan and Iceland says even though the fishing company has permission, there may be no fishing.
The government has issued the permit for this year, but then also the only active whaling company stating that it's too short notice and potentially no whaling will take place this year.
She also went on to say that more people are against whaling than for it, with older populations supporting the process and younger ones against it. In 2023, the Icelandic leaders temporarily halted whale hunting for 2 months. That's after government reports showed that the whale's killing time exceeded the limit set by local animal welfare laws.
Coming up.
Hi, I'm Caleb, and this is my story. I was born with osteogenesis imperfecta, or brittle bone disease. I have broken my bones almost 200 times, and I have had 11 surgeries. But I didn't let that stop me. I love to bike ride, climb, race, and I'm learning how to stand and walk. But I can only do all of this because of generous people like you and Shriners Hospitals for Children.
Because of people like you, Shriners Hospitals for Children has helped more than 1.3 million kids just like me, regardless of their family's ability to pay.
Shriners Hospitals for Children is only able to provide this world-class, life-changing medical care because of the generous gifts of people just like you.
Because of you, I can ride my bike. I can play basketball.
Because of people like you, I can run.
I can smile.
Will you send your love to the rescue today?
When you go to loveshriners.org right now and give just 63 cents a day, you're helping kids just like me.
Like me. Like me.
When you give today, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of the love you gave to a kid just like me.
Your gift, no matter how small, can help a child today.
This is your moment to make a difference.
When you pick up your phone, you know you have it right there, and call to give. You're helping kids like me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, please call again or give right away at loveshriners.org.
Your gift makes a difference. Thank you for giving.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel, actually, an effect. And I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times. And so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then a second time, I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it and over a few times. And wow, that was a big difference because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
And next, we're tuning into a House hearing on the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC. They're an independent agency created by Congress during the Great Depression to maintain consumer confidence in the financial system. The FDIC insures deposits in American banks and thrifts in the event of a bank failure or run.
In November last year, the Wall Street Journal published multiple articles detailing pervasive harassment and misconduct at the FDIC, from field offices to the chairman's office. Following the reports, the agency created a special committee to oversee an independent review of its workplace culture. This hearing looks at that report and the agency's ability to carry out its duty. Let's tune in.
And we heard from the FDIC employees who reported to us how proud they are to work at the FDIC.
Excellent. It's an amazing mission since 1933, I agree. An important mission. But I don't believe that the current director should be in charge of cleaning up this situation. And I'm glad, according to the ranking member, that he's going to appoint President Biden's going to appoint a new leader. But in the interim, for taking how long the confirmation process will take, it's my judgment that we should have the transition today, and that the current chairman should be out of his office in order to move this atmosphere forward. Mr. McKernan, let me turn and talk about the implications of this. We have a softening economy. We have a rising set of challenges in commercial real estate lending. We have the sharpest increase in interest rates since 1980, which has created some real pressure in our depository institutions. And I'm concerned that we don't have the right leadership to get the basic job done at the FDIC. What is your assessment of that? This committee heard testimony during Silicon Valley. It was not impressive what we heard from the FDIC. And in fact, you sent us a memo pointing out the significant managerial weaknesses.
Yeah, Congressman, what I would say to that is the state of affairs of the FDIC is challenging. Morale is bad. We just fell, I think, second to last in our group in our federal employment surveys. We were near the top for quite some time. I think it's fair to say that a lot of staff have lost confidence in leadership and even the board. I think it's fair to say that staff have seen no real accountability, so it's hard to see much commitment to change absent that accountability. I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of skepticism, even cynicism, about prospects at the FDIC. But I think it's also important to really emphasize that almost all the FDIC employees are good people. Like I said at the beginning, these are solid public servants, deeply committed to the mission, despite everything that we have going on. And they're going to keep pushing to do the mission. I think it's the job of the leadership to make sure that they can do their job. Frankly,
I agree. Let me reclaim my time in closing and simply say, you're right. We've got to have the best morale, the best esprit de corps, the best talent in the FDIC to handle their jobs. But I don't believe that's being done. I believe change needs to happen immediately. Yield back.
And this will be the final questioning before we go to floor votes, and we'll recess after Ms. Velasquez. Ms. Velasquez,
Thank you.
From New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kim, Ms. Manu, can you tell us how far back these issues date and why employees didn't feel comfortable reporting them earlier?
As we explain in our report, these issues are longstanding. As Mr. Kim noted earlier, we included in our report about 50 representative examples of the types of allegations that we learned, and we provided detailed descriptions. And even among those representative examples, you have some allegations going back as far back as the late 1980s, and going on.
Okay, thanks. And do these reports become greater over time or less towards today?
It's difficult to speak to any patterns in terms of interpersonal misconduct identified at the FDIC. As we laid out in our report, the human resources group that receives and currently investigates allegations of interpersonal misconduct did not have a systematic way of keeping records of those types of allegations until about last year.
Thank you. And so, Acting Comptroller Sue, while these incidents certainly did occur on Chair Grunsberg's watch, they also occurred under the chairmanship of Jelena McWilliams. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Mr. Kim and Ms. Manu, your report states that over 500 people who reported allegations of misconduct are disproportionately women and people from underrepresented groups. Can you both speak to the type of incidents FDIC employees from this group face and how the good old boys culture enabled these events to occur without repercussion?
I can start. Yeah. We do make the finding that those who reported were predominantly women and from underrepresented groups. We noted that when we also noted that we also spoke to many people who had positive experiences at the FDIC. And in fact, some of the people who did report incidents generally had positive experiences themselves. But it was important for us to note that predominantly those reporting these issues were those who appeared to be women or underrepresented minorities.
So can you talk about the good old boy network?
Yes, we received reports about favoritism. For example, one of the examples that we included in the appendix with the representative examples talked about, and it was reported by two individuals where they observed they observed a manager acting inappropriately toward an employee in the presence of an executive. And in that situation, the executive asked the employee who had been yelled at and had been the subject of the abuse to apologize and did not say anything to the manager. And one of the people who reported to us observed that this was based on the personal relationship that the executive had with that manager, and to that individual was an example of the good old boys network.
So how do we break up this culture?
Cultural and structural transformation, we think, are important because, as we've explained, these issues are longstanding. There have been previous efforts to bring about culture change at the FDIC. We believe that in part because these issues have continued to persist, that those efforts have been ineffective. And so our recommendations, including the appointment of a monitor to oversee the FDIC's work going forward, are intended to bring about change.
Thank you. So the FDIC created an action plan that you are all aware. Can you speak to the viability of the plan and whether you think the plan alone is sufficient to address the structural and cultural changes?
As we noted in the report, the action plan does contain proposed actions that are overlap with our recommendations. And so obviously both were seeking to address a similar or same issue. However, we had some additional recommendations that we believed were important. As Ms. Menu mentioned, very important to us was an appointment of a transformation monitor who could monitor and audit the steps that were being taken, and that this person be, or the monitor be independent and have the necessary resources. Also, we recommended the retention of an external expert who is expert in these areas. And then importantly, we had a recommendation that the review process be conducted by a group that is independent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
Stay with us and we'll bring you more in the next 2 hours.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。 所以我希望给你的每一把枪，都是首先我所信任的。
Are you ready to help your family get prepared for the unexpected?
Everyone in? Here we go!
Ladybug and Cat Noir know how important it is to be ready. Because you never know when Hawkmoth is going to strike, or a disaster will hit.
Go, Rose!
And you don't need miraculous powers. Just put those planning skills you already have to good use. Know who to call, decide on a safe meeting location, and create an emergency preparedness kit. Make a plan that will help you and your family be ready when emergencies happen. Ready Kids can help.
I'm coming to save you!
Get started at ready.gov/kids.
Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
Israel says around 90 missiles were launched at it from Lebanon in retaliation for an Israeli strike that killed a senior Hezbollah commander. And Secretary of State Antony Blinken speaks about his meeting with the Qatari Prime Minister.
A Biden campaign program called Seniors for Biden-Harris could be yielding some results. More on 3 key endorsements.
Inflation cooled more than expected in May, according to new data today, delivering a welcome piece of news just hours before the Federal Reserve is set to make its latest decision.
Amazon is facing legal claims from thousands of its delivery drivers who are classified as independent contractors instead of employees. The drivers say this has led to unpaid wages and other financial losses.
The European Union is upping tariffs imposed on Chinese electric vehicles. How the bloc is coming more in line with the U.S. approach.
A defected Chinese spy tells all about his orders from the Chinese regime, an insider account of how Beijing hires agents to hunt down dissidents outside its borders.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Hi, I'm Kevin Hogan sitting in for Chris Beers today. Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets with the Qatari Prime Minister. Blinken discussed the Hamas terror group and its reaction to a recent ceasefire proposal after the meeting.
A deal was on the table that was virtually identical to the proposal that Hamas put forward on May the 6th. A deal that the entire world is behind, a deal Israel's accepted, and Hamas could have answered with a single word: yes.
More on the Middle East conflict. The Israeli military said Wednesday that about 90 missiles were fired from Lebanon toward its northern territory. It says fires were sparked in a number of areas.
The IDF says some of the missiles were intercepted, while others fell in several locations in northern Israel.
And a United Nations inquiry says both Israel and Hamas committed war crimes since the war in Gaza started. The report accuses both sides routinely disregarding international law.
Meanwhile, Israel accuses the UN inquiry of anti-Israel discrimination and attempting to justify the October 7th attacks.
And a federal jury convicted Hunter Biden on all 3 federal felony gun charges yesterday. The first son faces up to 25 years in prison, but he likely will not receive the maximum sentence as a first-time offender. Here are some reactions in New York City to the verdict.
I believe that he probably was guilty of the charges because being the president's son wasn't blown out of proportion, quite possibly. But at the end of the day, he did do the crime, and so you got to be held accountable for that.
I don't think that political candidates should get off the hook just because they're in politics.
When it comes to Joe Biden's son, was there an opportunity to pursue this case maybe beyond what normally would have occurred? Maybe so, because of what's been going on both sides of the political aisle. Was Hunter Biden guilty? Based on what I read, what I saw, sure he was.
And joining us now is Mike McCoy, former federal prosecutor and a Second Amendment attorney for Mountain States Legal Foundation. And so welcome to our show, Mike. A Delaware jury has found Hunter Biden guilty of all 3 counts in his federal gun case. Could you break down the charges for us?
Yeah, there were, as you said, 3 felony gun-related charges. The first 2 were connected to him filling out this form that's called an ATF 4473 form, which is required every time you purchase a firearm from a gun dealer. And that form is what triggers a background check to make sure that you are someone who can lawfully possess a firearm. So you're not a felon, for example. In this particular case, that form includes a question that asks if you are an addict or currently using illegal narcotics. And on that question, Hunter Biden selected no, that he wasn't either an addict or someone who was using illegal narcotics. The third charge relates to his possession of a firearm as an addict or as someone who's using an illegal narcotic. And so because of him filling out that form and wrongfully indicating his status at the time he purchased that firearm, and then subsequently possessing that firearm, he was charged with these 3 felony counts.
Now, what do you expect in terms of sentencing with this case?
You know, that's a good question. Technically, he's statutorily speaking, under the statute, he could face up to 25 years in prison. That's not going to happen here. It's very rare that a defendant gets the statutory maximum sentence. His guideline range, and under the federal system, there's a sentencing guideline that takes into account his criminal history, which is basically non-existent, as well as the seriousness of the offense. And this is not particularly a serious offense, puts him at a range of approximately 12 months. So he could face up probably somewhere around a year in prison, but it's also very possible, and I think likely, that the judge in this case will impose probation rather than a prison term, given the fact that he has limited criminal history and given the nature of the offense itself.
And as a Second Amendment attorney, how do you see the potential for an appeal here?
Oh, there will be an appeal. There almost always is in criminal cases. But I think the prosecution really presented a very solid case. I mean, it wasn't just based on one witness's testimony. It was based on a lot of witnesses' testimony and a lot of documentary evidence and text messages and even video evidence. And perhaps the most damning evidence that was presented was the defendant's own words, right? They played large segments of his audiobook, of his memoir that he had written, where he talks about his drug addiction around the time he purchased the firearm, as well as the fact that he was still using narcotics. And so his own words really convicted him in this case. And because of that, even if an appellate court were to say that the judge committed some error or the prosecutor committed some error, because there's so many layers establishing guilt in this case, that even if one of those layers is removed, it's not going to change the outcome of the case. And so the court will simply conclude it was harmless error and basically uphold the conviction. So I would be shocked if the appellate court did anything to overturn this conviction. And I think ultimately this conviction will stand.
Now, legal analysts have also said that they think that actually, I want to turn to President Biden. He said recently that he would not pardon his son. He does have the ability to do that, of course. Do you think that that's the right move for the president?
Politically, I do. Obviously, I don't know if it's the right move as the father of this son who's been convicted. But politically, that's really his only move right now. If he were to say prior to this election that his intent is to pardon his son once he gets through the election, which I still probably think is on the table, quite frankly. But if he were to say that publicly, that would really undermine his push and thrust against President Trump's conviction from a week or 10 days ago. He really can't speak out of both sides of his mouth, right? And in this case, pardoning his son would really be a huge liability for him going into this election. So he's not going to do that. What he does after the election, what he does if he's not reelected or if he is reelected is, I think, still up in the air, quite frankly. But at this point in time, he's made the right political move in saying that he will not pardon his son.
And just from the standpoint of where he's at now, but also, as you mentioned, depending on whether he continues to remain in office, are there other options for him in regards to, how he deals with his son's conviction legally?
For the president, no, I mean, he has the right, obviously, to pardon him, and that's something that's still on the table. I mean, the other little wild card that's at play here is that this isn't Humber's only legal issue right now. He's also been indicted in California on multiple tax fraud related charges or tax related charges. And so he's facing felony charges there. That case is scheduled to go to trial in September. And right before the election in that situation, that's also a very solid case. And so right now, the president has to play a little bit of tightrope game here because he's hoping these stories get tamped down because this is not good press for him. Certainly pardoning him, his son, would not be good press for the president. And this next trial is not good press. So I don't think he's got a whole lot of play here. The president doesn't. I think he's just got to sit back, say the right things, say that the justice system is working, say that he supports and loves his son. But other than that, try to keep his focus on the election and try to distract everyone else's focus away from his son's legal troubles as much as possible.
Right. And you mentioned just lastly, Mike, the California case. We spoke with an attorney earlier today who said that it's the potential for him to take the stand in that case could potentially impact any appeal or other considerations in this case. What's your take on the relationship between the two cases?
Well, it's interesting. So in this case, the defense primary argument was that the prosecution could not establish that he was an addict or a user at the very time he purchased the firearm. But now my understanding is their defense on the tax case is that he didn't knowingly commit these tax crimes because at the time he was so addicted and under the influence of illegal narcotics that he couldn't make these decisions knowingly or intentionally. And so therefore, some of the elements of the crimes simply cannot be established. So they're playing both sides of the game here. On one case, they said he wasn't an addict or addicted or using narcotics. With the tax case, they're going to likely switch tactics and say he was so addicted and so under the influence of narcotics that that's why he had these issues, these tax issues, and this failure to pay his taxes or to pay the proper amount of taxes. So they're going to hope that they can use either side of the same argument to their effect. But so far, it hasn't worked on this first case. And I would be surprised if it worked on the second one.
All right. Thank you so much for your analysis. Mike McCoy, former federal prosecutor and Second Amendment attorney. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
President Biden gets some good news. 3 groups representing older Americans endorsed him today for a second term as president.
The National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, the Social Security Works PAC, and the Bipartisan National United Committee to Protect Pensions all said they would back Biden in 2024.
The endorsements follow the January endorsement of Biden by the nearly 4.5 million member Alliance for Retired Americans. The committee said Biden had worked to protect seniors' earned benefits.
The campaign on Tuesday launched Seniors for Biden-Harris. That's a grassroots program to energize voters 65 and up.
It has more than a dozen events planned, from bingo nights and pickleball tournaments to appearances by senior administration officials.
And still to come, Florida isn't allowed to restrict cross-sex procedures for minors. A federal judge ruling wipes out some key parts of the law.
Thousands of residents desert their small hometown in Mexico. They're fleeing an intensive 3-day siege by heavily armed men. The government is now responding. We have that story for you in just a minute.
Lord Heavenly Father, I pray to you today to guide us tomorrow. Give us strength as we face death. Help us not to be afraid, as we know that we are going to be coming to your kingdom. I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you'll also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wright. We thank you for joining us and watching America's Hope here on NTD News. Bottom line is, I know you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but let's give you some good news in the midst of the bad news. Watch us nightly, right here on NTD News, for a full dose of America's Hope.
It's good to have you back with us. A busy day for democracy as 4 states hold primaries and 1 state has a special election. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the highlights.
South Carolina, Nevada, North Dakota, and Maine all held primaries on Tuesday, while Ohio held a special election for a vacated congressional seat. In South Carolina, Representative Nancy Mace won the Republican nomination. Mace defeated challengers Catherine Templeton and Bill Young. Mace was endorsed by former President Donald Trump. The Congresswoman is a regular on interview shows, where she has called for her party to moderate on abortion and marijuana. She received criticism for joining 7 conservative members to oust former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. In Nevada, Republican Sam Brown overcame a crowded field of primary opponents to win Nevada's GOP U.S. Senate primary. That sets up a fierce general election battle against incumbent Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen that could decide which party controls the U.S. Senate. Brown, who was nearly killed by a roadside bomb in Afghanistan that scarred his face, made military service central to his message this campaign cycle. Brown was endorsed by former President Trump on Sunday, further boosting the Republican who far outpaced his opponents in fundraising. In North Dakota, Representative Kelly Armstrong won Tuesday's Republican primary for governor of the state. Armstrong currently occupies North Dakota's lone House seat. The Trump-endorsed candidate beat Lieutenant Governor Tammy Miller in the race to succeed Republican Governor Doug Burgum. Burgum did not seek a third term and is under consideration to be former President Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate. Over to Maine, where former NASCAR driver and current state lawmaker Austin Theriault defeated fellow Maine House member Mike Sobolewski. Theriault will face 3-term incumbent Democratic Congressman Jared Golden in Maine's 2nd congressional district. The district is the site of a shooting that killed 18 in Lewiston in October. And finally over to Ohio, where Republican State Senator Michael Rulli won a special election Tuesday for a U.S. House seat that has sat vacant for months. The victory expands the GOP's narrow majority in the congressional chamber. Rulli defeated Democrat Michael Kripchak to fill the remainder of Republican Bill Johnson's unexpired term. Kripchak served in the Air Force and has done stints as an actor. He currently works at a local restaurant. The two face off again November 5th for a full 2-year congressional term that begins in January. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Turning to election security, a Bridgeport city councilman and a Democratic Party official have been charged with illegally handling absentee ballots. Alfredo Castillo and a Democratic Vice Chairwoman Wanda Jeter Pataki were arrested for their alleged actions in the 2019 mayoral primary. The chief state's attorney emphasized the importance of election integrity. 2 campaign workers were also charged. All 4 face accusations including tampering with witnesses and misrepresenting voting eligibility. Mayoral candidate John Gomez called the arrests long overdue, highlighting ongoing issues with election fraud. The State Elections Enforcement Commission is still investigating Bridgeport's elections.
And a federal judge strikes down key parts of a Florida law that banned cross-sex procedures for minors. U.S. District Judge Robert L. Hinkle declared some of the provisions of the law unconstitutional. The law was signed by Governor Ron DeSantis in May 2023. Its stated aim was to protect children from what the governor's office described as gender politics in schools. It also created a pathway for individuals to obtain damages if injured after receiving cross-sex procedures or medications as children.
Judge Hinkle's ruling does not affect the ban on cross-sex surgeries for minors, but blocks the ban on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. He argued such treatments could be medically appropriate. A spokesperson for Governor DeSantis announced plans to appeal.
In Montana and Texas are suing Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra. They're challenging a new rule that requiring states to fund cross-sex procedures through Medicaid. The regulation also mandates providers to offer such services even if state laws prohibit them. The lawsuit aims to block the rule, which works by expanding non-discrimination protections under the Affordable Care Act to include gender identity.
The Attorneys General of Montana and Texas argue that it's an unconstitutional attempt to override state law.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton called the medical procedures experimental and dangerous. The rule's implementation begins in July 2024.
HHS defends it as a step towards inclusive health care. Elon Musk is dropping his lawsuit against OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. He had accused its CEO of abandoning the original mission of the startup, which Musk co-founded.
Attorneys for Elon Musk Tuesday asked a California state court to dismiss the lawsuit against OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. A court filing says they did not offer a reason. Musk co-founded the artificial intelligence startup in 2015, but left in 2018. In his lawsuit, Musk said co-founder Greg Brockman and CEO Altman originally approached him to make an open-source nonprofit company. But Musk said OpenAI was now reserving advanced artificial intelligence technology for private customers and is focused on making money. The lawsuit said OpenAI set the founding agreement aflame last year when it released its most powerful language model, GPT-4. Musk in the lawsuit asked a judge to force OpenAI to make its research and technology available to the public. He asked the court to prevent the startup from using its assets for the financial benefit of Microsoft and other big companies. The lawsuit sought a jury trial and for the company and CEO to pay back any profit they received from the business. OpenAI pushed back against Musk's claims, arguing Musk is jealous and the case should be dismissed. The court filing said Musk's lawsuit was based on incoherent claims and described it as an attempt by Musk to advance his own AI interests. Last year, Musk founded his own AI company, XAI, which he said will be maximally truth-seeking. The company's website says its mission is to advance a collective understanding of the universe. OpenAI and an attorney for Musk did not immediately respond to requests for comment.
Amazon contract drivers want more benefits. They say they are minimum wage employees who should have overtime rights. And so on Tuesday, more than 15,000 of them filed arbitration claims against the company. Flex drivers are contract workers who deliver same-day packages for Amazon. Right now, the e-commerce giant classifies them as independent contractors who earn between $18 to $25 an hour. But lawyers for the drivers say Amazon only pays the drivers for a predetermined block. So if a driver books a 3-hour block, they only get paid for those hours, even if deliveries take more time. And workers want to change that. So why arbitration and not just a flat-out lawsuit? Well, drivers had to sign an agreement with Amazon that forbids them from taking legal action.
And 4 more states have joined the U.S. government's landmark antitrust suit against Apple. According to a court filing yesterday, Indiana, Massachusetts, Nevada, and Washington have joined the lawsuit. That brings the total number of states to 19, plus the District of Columbia. The U.S. government and the states sued Apple in March. They accused the iPhone maker of illegally monopolizing the smartphone market. The filing comes a day after Apple announced artificial intelligence enhancements to its mobile and desktop operating systems at its annual developers conference.
The global economy is improving, and that's thanks in large part to the U.S. The World Bank's new forecast predicts global growth to reach an annual rate of 2.6% this year. That's up from the 2.4% it predicted in January. The bank said the expected growth of the U.S. economy at 2.5% is driving that. It's the only nation whose expected growth has risen since the beginning of the year. Though good news, it may not provide relief to Americans who are fighting the worst inflation since the 1980s. Consumer prices are up almost 19% since President Joe Biden was inaugurated. A recent Gallup poll shows only 38% of adults in the U.S. have confidence Biden will do the right thing for the economy. A healthy economy may also not be as great as it sounds, since it can produce conditions that make it less likely the Federal Reserve will lower interest rates. The elevated rates we have now are a threat to growth over the world.
Thousands of Mexicans have deserted their small town of Tila. They're fleeing an intensive 3-day siege by heavily armed men, leaving it a ghost town. The people are still too afraid to return, despite government troops now patrolling the empty streets. All of the town's inhabitants fled their homes. Some took government buses to nearby shelters. Around 4,000 people live there.
Heavily armed men arrived in Tila in trucks and began shooting at houses, businesses, and setting buildings on fire. The violence lasted 3 days. That's when the army arrived.
State authorities have since said some 5,000 troops have been deployed to the area and 6 suspects detained. Here's what a local said about the incident.
They burned my 2 houses, a lodging I have there because I live off this. They also burned my 2 vehicles, so I was now left in the street, the work done for 60 years.
The government says the violence in Tila resulted from a local land dispute. Residents complained that organized crime groups have long been extorting them and would punish those who did not pay up.
Locals reported growing violence over the years, as well as an increase in drug trafficking and extortion.
The area has become the site of a turf war between the powerful Jalisco New Generation cartel and the Sinaloa cartel. People are increasingly fleeing the violence and extortion. And coming up, inflation cooled more than expected in May, according to a new data today, delivering a welcome piece of news just hours before the Federal Reserve is set to make its latest decision.
The European Union imposing higher tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. The decision follows a similar move by Washington. We'll have that story in just a moment.
Hey everyone, it's me, Sebastian, and it is a beautiful day today. We have so much to be grateful for, so just remember, if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours. I just love inspiring people to be the best they can be, and the reason I'm able to inspire so many people is because people like you who inspire me with your support of Shriners Hospitals for Children. Since I was little, I've broken 100 bones, and I've had 19 surgeries. Shriners Hospitals for Children was with me every step of the way. But more than that, They've given me the confidence to know I can do whatever I set my mind to. Like right now, I've set my mind to sharing my smile with you. Did you get it?
Because of people like you, I can play the violin.
I can play piano.
I can understand.
The help I get is only possible because of caring people like you who pick up the phone and call the number on your screen to make your monthly gift.
And when you call or go online right now to donate $19 a month or more, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of all the smiles you're bringing to kids' faces every day.
Kids like me.
And me.
And me.
And me.
So what are you waiting for? You can inspire kids like me by visiting loveshiners.org. After all, you can't help everyone, but you can help someone. So let's go!
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving. Join me and bring a smile to the world with your monthly gift today.
Please call now. If operators are busy, please call again or go to loveshriners.org right away.
Join me and bring a smile to the world.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
When they learn something new and you can just see in their faces, it's such an incredible moment. It's those moments that are my favorite.
We're in the nation's capital asking the important questions so that you're in the know. Join us daily, Monday through Friday, on the Capitol Report on NTD News.
And joining us now is NTD's Business Matters host, Don Ma, to give us the latest updates from the tech and business world.
Don, let's talk about the economy.
Okay, so biggest news today when it comes to that, of course, the new CPI report is out. So let me tell you some good news here. In fact, so inflation cooled more than expected in May. This is according to new data, delivering a welcome piece of news for the Federal Reserve just hours before it makes its latest announcement on interest rates. So consumer prices for a year-over-year basis rose 3.3%. And this is slowing from last month's numbers, 3.4% rate. Now, this is according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. On a month-over-month basis, prices were flat, so inflation was actually zero compared to April. It's actually the first time since July 2022 that the consumer price index did not rise on a monthly basis. Now, to helping slow inflation in May, we're following gas prices, dropped 3.6% from April. They're still up though for the year. Grocery prices were flat and overall food prices went up just by a tiny bit, 0.1%. It was lifted by a slight acceleration in inflation at the restaurant level. However, on the other hand, shelter inflation more than offset the decline in gasoline prices, rising 0.4% for the fourth month in a row. And this is underscoring pressures that Americans are feeling from house-related expenses. So just a real quick briefing on that report.
Good to hear that, Don. Thank you. Next up, what can we expect from the Federal Reserve decision later today?
Right, so that's the big question here. And the chances for an interest rate cut is very slim here, slim to none. In fact, that means the Fed's benchmark interest rate will likely stay the same at around a range of 5.25% to 5.5%. It's almost been there for a year now, and it's at a 23-year high. And the Federal Reserve officials there today will likely make official what's been clear for many weeks now, and that's they're downgrading their outlook for interest rate cuts. That's with inflation sticking at a level above their 2% target. The Fed's rate policies typically have a very big impact on the cost of mortgages, for example, auto loans, credit card rates, and other forms of consumer and business borrowing. And the downgrade in their outlook for rate cuts could mean that these borrowing costs will likely stay higher for longer. We've heard them say that for a long time now, and potentially a disappointment for those who's looking for prices to come down, at least for borrowing costs, that is.
Well, just a few months ago in March, the forecast was for there to be 3 rate cuts this year. Now, is there going to be 1, 2? It's just pretty too close to tell. Don Ma, on NTD's Business Matters host, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Johnson & Johnson will pay $700 million to end a probe into its marketing of baby powder and other talc-based products that allegedly caused cancer. The case was the result of an investigation by 42 states as well as Washington, D.C.
J&J has not admitted wrongdoing as part of the settlement. The firm says its products are safe and do not cause cancer. It sold the talc goods for more than a century before taking them off sale. J&J still faces thousands of other lawsuits and a class action that accuses it of hiding dangers from investors. As of late March, over 61,000 people were still suing the company, most of them women with ovarian cancer. The company has twice tried to resolve the cases by placing into bankruptcy an entity it created to contain its talc liabilities, but the moves were blocked by the courts. In May, J&J proposed a third bankruptcy filing worth almost $6.5 billion to settle most of the cases. It has set aside $11 billion in all to cover the liabilities. The company said Tuesday it continued to pursue a comprehensive resolution of the litigation.
The Justice Department sentenced 2 Texas men to 45 months in prison yesterday. One was a Chinese citizen and the other was a U.S. citizen.
A U.S. jury in November convicted the pair of trying to sell Iranian oil to a Chinese refinery.
The department said that's in violation of sanctions imposed by Washington and of conspiracy to commit money laundering. The European Union said today that it would impose tariffs of up to 38% on Chinese electric vehicles coming into the bloc. The decision follows Washington's tariff hikes on Chinese EVs set at 100%.
The Commission has also pre-disclosed today the level of provisional countervailing duties it would impose on imports of battery electric vehicles from China.
The Vice President of the EU Commission said China's unfair trade practices have injured European automakers, adding that the bloc has reached out to Chinese authorities to discuss a solution.
The EU's auto sector accounts for nearly 13 million jobs. Last year, the bloc imported over $11 billion worth of Chinese electric cars, an increase of $1.6 billion from the year before.
Behind the increase are China's much lower prices, which EU automakers can't compete with. When the EU leaders raised concerns about Beijing's unfair subsidies last week, the Chinese Commerce Minister dismissed the accusation and urged the bloc to support trade.
Last October, the EU Commission launched an anti-subsidy investigation into China's EV supply chain. Hong Kong's government canceled the passports of 6 overseas activists today under a new set of national security laws. Prosecutors accused the 6 pro-democracy activists of colluding with external forces. Among them is former lawmaker Nathan Law.
Police offered rewards of close to $130,000 last year for information leading to their arrests. Authorities have banned anyone from providing them funds or doing business with them in Hong Kong. Doing so could carry a penalty of up to 7 years in prison.
The new law, called Article 23, comes on top of a Beijing-imposed national security law from 2020. That law has been used to jail pro-democracy activists and shut down media outlets. Crimes for subversion, collusion, sedition, theft of state secrets, and espionage now carry jail terms of several years to life.
And in a stunning reversal, a former Chinese spy attended the rally of Falun Gong practitioners in Australia last week, a spiritual group that he used to spy on by order of Beijing. What message is the defector trying to send? Here are the details.
A defected Chinese spy now calling on the West to pay more attention to China's covert activities in overseas Chinese communities. Called Eric, he attended a rally held by Falun Gong practitioners in Australia. It's quite a twist, because for over a decade, he worked as an undercover agent, helping Beijing track dissidents overseas and lure them back to China. Among his former targets were practitioners of Falun Gong, a spiritual meditation that has suffered brutal persecution at the hands of the Chinese regime.
You might have read some stories that I've provided about attempts to catch a Falun Gong practitioner called Li Guixin. Some of the details about how the secret police went after him were quite shocking.
He noted he would review more in the future.
We need to be clear about one fact, and that is when the Chinese Communist Party goes after you, it doesn't care if you have faith, morality, or actually committed a crime. One simple principle it acts on is whether you're against it, the CCP.
Back to the plot to snatch dissidents. It was 2021, and Eric was still taking orders from China's secret police to target dissidents. His handler gave him a new target, a Falun Gong practitioner named Li Guixin. Li was seeking refuge in Thailand at the time. He fled China after being abducted 5 times over his faith. The handler wrote to Eric, "Right now, we need to confirm whether we're looking at the right apartment. Observe what's inside and around the apartment. Take some photos and videos. Organize what you see later so that we can plan our stakeout." The handler later sent some of Li's family photos to Eric. When Li later saw the photos that had been obtained, he said he was shocked. At least one of them was never posted on the internet.
I was shocked. It's like, this is for real.
As for Eric, he said he went to inspect Li's home after he received the address.
But when we got here, he had already moved.
Eric noted he wasn't involved in this case much later on, though he couldn't confirm if other agents had targeted Li. As for Li, Eric's testimony confirmed some of his past suspicions.
It was December 2021. A man reached out to us saying he was trying to learn how to practice Falun Gong. We welcomed him to our home, and he later borrowed a copy of John Falun and asked us for our address.
John Falun is the main text of Falun Gong. Li's first suspicion arose when a woman called him on the phone.
She said, "You guys are in great danger. You have to leave the city right away." Our family had never experienced anything like this. We were very nervous, so we moved right away.
Li now lives in the U.S. Even today, the Chinese regime hasn't eased the pressure on him. He told the Epoch Times that while on a call with his sister in China this February, she said the police had just come to her home that day and that they know Li's situation quite well. Then oddly, she told him to come back. Li suspects authorities threatened his sister and that she made the comment in case she was monitored.
And before we go to our break, we'd like to share an announcement. NTD's original documentary, Hollywood Takeover, China's Control in the Film Industry, is coming to the big screen in New York City this Saturday.
It will screen at the Manhattan Film Festival on June 15th at 1 p.m. Here's a preview.
Is it really just about money? Are there other parts at stake?
Chinese influence was playing into what we see in U.S. films.
China said, you can't have that in there. And Hollywood listened.
This is insane.
And we all know that their goal is global domination.
People have been brainwashed without knowing it.
That's this Saturday at 1 p.m. at the Manhattan Film Festival.
Don't miss it. Use the link down below to get your tickets.
And still to come, young political activists gathered to support a bill that would create a new department in the executive branch. Find out how they hope to amplify youth voices in government.
Hear testimony on e-cigarettes for youth as lawmakers seek answers on how to tackle this epidemic. Stay tuned for more coverage.
Come to Mathis Home for the Monumental Savings Event and get big values on the latest dining sets. Here's a hot buy. This table and 4 side chairs is only $442. Shop and compare, nobody beats Mathis Home. Or this 72-inch table is a great value at just $670 with a genuine white marble top. Check out this mid-century modern set. You get the table and 4 chairs all for just $698. Shop now and save during the Monumental Savings Event at Mathis Home.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
I was born into the wrong body, Mom.
I was astounded by what they were teaching. Child Protective Services did show up at my house. Parents are fearful of losing custody of their children because they say the wrong thing. Risks?
No risks. We got everything covered, I assure you, Mrs. Connors.
They don't want anyone to know the truth.
I can't stay quiet about this anymore. It's destroyed my health.
We're pushed into silence.
All right, I'm at the house, and I'm gonna head inside. Okay, come on, this door. I'm in the house.
What do you see?
Let me check the den. There's nothing in the den. Let me check the kitchen. There's no one downstairs, it looks like.
Wait, what was that?
I don't know. Let me head upstairs.
What do you see?
What the? Did you shut this bathroom door?
No.
Oh,
What?
It's not here.
What do you mean?
The gun's not here.
What? Where is it?
Oh my God.
What's going on?
Cam.
Oh my God, what's going
Cameron, are you in there? Open the door. Cam, please, please, open the door, Cameron. Come on, Cam.
Welcome back. Young political activists joined Congressman Darren Soto yesterday to support a bill that'll create a new department in the executive branch. The goal would be to amplify youth voices in government.
The office would be headed by a director appointed by the president and would be in charge of identifying issues primarily and substantially affecting young Americans, advising the president on these issues, supporting strategic coordination and communication between the executive office of the president and federal agencies.
The bill would establish the Office of Young Americans to address progressive issues related to American youth.
The proposal is the brainchild of the Future Forum Caucus, a group of younger Democrat lawmakers seeking to increase youth engagement in government.
Many young leaders say they're concerned about climate change, abortion access, student loan forgiveness, and affordable health care.
Mental health and suicide prevention are other top priorities for young Americans as well.
And e-cigarettes are the most commonly used tobacco product among American youth. Yet, according to the CDC, most middle and high school students who vape want to quit.
Most e-cigarettes contain nicotine, which is highly addictive. Nicotine can harm the parts of an adolescent's brain that control attention, learning, mood, and impulse control.
This next hearing by the Senate Committee on the Judiciary examines ways to combat the youth vaping epidemic by enhancing enforcement against illegal e-cigarettes.
Let's tune in.
Alternatives to an otherwise, to an activity that you as a physician, you wish they wouldn't even vape, right? But there's a reason why there are nicotine lozenges. There's a reason why there are nicotine pouches. They are providing people with off-ramps to habits that hopefully they can quit. It's how I quit last year, starting with pouch tobacco, actually starting with rough cut tobacco, moving to pouch spitless tobacco, then ultimately to a nicotine pouch, and now I'm, as of last September, I haven't touched it since. And Josie, I wish you the same. I know it's not going to be easy. But let's not forget that these are healthier alternatives in the hands of adults. What we're trying to do is remove it as an option, easily accessible option to children. We'll have a separate discussion maybe on another day about the ultimate disposition, but we shouldn't lose that. And Mr. Abood, when we see these shelves of products, and I guess Dr. Wiley, it was the Senator Durbin's staff that went to the vape shop. I haven't been to one yet, but I will go. We're talking about an illegal product here. We're talking about something that shouldn't be on the shelves. So, Mr. Spross, could you just, for the record, could you submit communications from your association to your members that say, this is bad, don't do it, just evidence? You've already suggested that you're doing that, but that you're universally communicating to anybody that's associated or any other retailer. We'll ask the same of others. Now they're saying this is bad, get it off the shelves. It's not only illegal, it's unhealthy. Can you submit that for the record?
Yeah, we communicate to our members anytime there's an enforcement action against products that are deemed illegal by the FDA.
Mr. Abood, your industry future rests on getting this right. And again, I've got to believe that you don't see your future as successfully marketing to kids. That is not a sustainable path for a credible, a legitimate business in the United States. Probably nowhere, but certainly not in the United States. So if you were waving a wand and you were Dr. King, or you were in charge of the federal government regulatory agencies, or you were a member of the U.S. Senate and wanted to fix this problem, what would your suggestion be? Number one, do you suggest that there is a problem? Is there a problem that needs to be fixed? That's the first question. Otherwise, it disqualifies the second one. Yeah. Is there a problem that exists with youth vaping and a vector to more dangerous outcomes?
There is definitely an issue that persists.
Now you get an opportunity to wave a wand. What should we do?
There's two, maybe three principal things that we do. The first is that we implement serious marketing and access restrictions, the kind that we've been meeting with members on the Hill about, and we've been recommending for years. Unfortunately, this body has typically only wanted to talk about banning flavors as if flavors was in itself the only thing about marketing. We know that youth are impacted by this issue. They say they are impacted and attracted to vaping for many other reasons other than vaping. Marketing, we can get to those concerns, we can get to access restrictions and do things that doesn't require removing all the products that adults are using. The second thing is, from an FDA perspective, I think we've clearly heard the testimony today. This is a hot mess right now, and there is no clear pathway out, particularly through this PMTA process. And you heard Director King say, well, we're going to try to resolve these applications, but we have to worry about litigation. Of course they do, because they put themselves in a box now where they have rejected en masse all flavored vaping applications. So they can't make any more decisions along those lines without worrying about what the Supreme Court thinks. But the answer is already in the Tobacco Control Act. They could implement a tobacco product standard. They can move on it aggressively. They can state what the products should should and should not be in the products, how products should and should not be manufactured. They can lay out those standards that manufacturers can comply with. There won't be any black box questioning as to what happens when an application goes in. It won't take 4 or 5 years for an application to get resolved. And then we can move forward with an actual regulated market. But unless they make harm reduction their North Star, unless they say we believe in vaping products and we want to encourage them like they are doing in other countries, we are going to persist in having an illicit market. It will just be a purely black market, not sold through any of the legal or regulated, licensed, and tax-paying retailers and distributors that our entities represent.
Thank you.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Abood, the reason why you don't want your kids to vape is because of the health risk, correct?
What I want my kids is to be healthy as possible. And when they're suffering from a variety of issues that many adolescents are dealing with, then we have to address those as parents.
Well, I think you've just answered my question. I have limited time, but I think the answer is yes. And the health risks are, number one, nicotine addiction. Number two, the substances that may be in the vaping material. We have no idea what they are when they come from China. They may be as harmful as the carcinogens in tobacco. So I respect you as a parent, also of 4 children, that you want your kids to be in good health, and vaping is bad for their health. And I also respect your criticisms of federal regulation. As the chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation, I released a report in February that documented the regulatory failures that have created the hot mess that we have right now. It's on us, the federal government, as well as on the vaping manufacturers. But what we documented was the missed opportunities by federal agencies to stem the tide of addiction. This years-long investigation highlighted the shameless marketing tactics of new e-cigarette companies like Puff Bar, the half measures by the FDA that allowed Puff Bar to build on the popularity and addiction that Juul caused, and the need for enhanced federal enforcement. Am I correct in believing that you would support additional resources and stronger regulation?
Senator, to the earlier point, I also don't want my kids drinking alcohol or using cannabis in flavors of all varieties. I know kids are going to try things and to do things. I don't try to base our national public health policies or my beliefs on those based upon what's
Well, let me break down the question.
And before we head to break, if you have any feedback, please email us at news.today@ntd.com.
Stay with us. We'll have more stories in just a moment.
Tangazo hili linahusu njaa. Tarajia kuona watoto wakiwa na njaa katika maeneo haya. Mambo yalikuwa bora kwa miaka mingi. Tuliweza kupigana na njaa na watoto wachache walikufa. Lakini sasa mambo yamebadilika na kwa mabaya zaidi. Hii ni kwa sababu wakati huu ukame umeangamiza zaidi.
Через війни та конфлікти ми мусимо залишати наші домівки і всі наші речі. Ми навіть не маємо їжі. Тому нам потрібна ваша допомога.
Millions of children are fighting to survive due to inequality, conflict, poverty, and the climate crisis. Save the Children is working alongside communities to provide a better life for children. And there's a way you can help. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month. Only 33 cents a day. We urgently need 1,000 new monthly donors in the next 30 days to help the children we support around the world. You can help provide food, medicine, care, and protection, plus so much more that a child needs, by calling right now and giving just $10 a month.
Ви можете допомогти голодуючим родинам вижити.
और बच्चों को भूख से मरने से रोक सकते हैं।
All we need are 1,000 monthly donors in the next 30 days. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
Toto kote duniani potrzebują waszej допомоги.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Please call or go online to hungerstopsnow.org to help save lives today.
When I started MyPillow, it was just a problem solution, one product company. Well, since then, with the help of my dedicated employees, we now have hundreds of products, some you might not even know about. To get the word out, we're having a $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. And for the first time ever, our 6-pack towel sets, you guessed it, just $25. Our brand new 4-pack dish towels, $25. And I've never done this before. Premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, any size, any loft level, even king size for only $25. And there's so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code for our $25 extravaganza. Order $75 and over, your entire order ships absolutely free.
Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
President Biden on his way to the G7 summit in Italy, what the agenda is and what deal we can expect to see come out of it.
The House is set to vote on whether to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress. Find out what's at stake.
A troubling pattern rises across the country. The increased targeting of EV charging stations for their cables made of conducive and valuable copper wiring.
Graduating seniors everywhere have mixed emotions at graduations, but dozens of survivors of the Sandy Hook shootings are graduating with extra emotions. We catch you up 12 years later with some of the survivors.
Efforts to push for a ceasefire deal in Gaza continue. Hear what Secretary of State Antony Blinken has to say now that Hamas has responded.
Higher tariffs imposed on Chinese electric vehicles. The European Union announced the hike today, a decision that follows Washington's tariff hikes on Chinese EVs.
Japanese electronic car maker Aspark claims its new Owl SP600 is the world's fastest electric vehicle. The EV breaks the previous record of 258 miles per hour.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Hi, I'm Kevin Hogan, sitting in for Chris Beers.
And we have some breaking news.
The Biden administration is announcing over 300 new sanctions aimed at further isolating and financially weakening Russia.
The Department of Treasury said the sanctions take aim at financial institutions supporting Russia's war in third countries.
The new sanctions would restrict Russia's access to certain U.S. software and information technology services. They target over 300 individuals and entities that help Russia sustain its war effort and evade sanctions.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen highlighted that Russia is relying on critical supplies from third countries accessing foreign technology, and using foreign financial institutions.
In particular, the measure will take aim at China. The Chinese Communist regime has managed to fill a significant portion of Russia's industrial base since the war began.
And President Biden is heading to Italy right now for the G7 summit. The summit, starting tomorrow, is set to cover major challenges, including China and Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the Turkish president are joining the summit in southern Italy.
While there, Biden is expected to sign a bilateral security pact between the U.S. and Ukraine. The deal is supposed to have the U.S. continue its training of Ukraine's armed forces for 10 years.
There will also be more cooperation in the production of weapons and military equipment. Military assistance and intelligence sharing will also continue.
A busy day for democracy as 4 states hold primaries and 1 state has a special election. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the highlights.
South Carolina, Nevada, North Dakota, and Maine all held primaries on Tuesday, while Ohio held a special election for a vacated congressional seat. In South Carolina, Representative Nancy Mace won the Republican nomination. Mace defeated challengers Catherine Templeton and Bill Young. Mace was endorsed by former President Donald Trump. The Congresswoman is a regular on interview shows where she has called for her party to moderate on abortion and marijuana. She received criticism for joining 7 conservative members to oust former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. In Nevada, Republican Sam Brown overcame a crowded field of primary opponents to win Nevada's GOP U.S. Senate primary. That sets up a fierce general election battle against incumbent Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen that could decide which party controls the U.S. Senate. Brown, who was nearly killed by a roadside bomb in Afghanistan that scarred his face, made military service central to his message this campaign cycle. Brown was endorsed by former President Trump on Sunday, further boosting the Republican who far outpaced his opponents in fundraising. In North Dakota, Representative Kelly Armstrong won Tuesday's Republican primary for governor of the state. Armstrong currently occupies North Dakota's lone House seat. The Trump-endorsed candidate beat Lieutenant Governor Tammy Miller in the race to succeed Republican Governor Doug Burgum. Burgum did not seek a 3rd term and is under consideration to be former President Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate. Over to Maine, where former NASCAR driver and current state lawmaker Austin Theriault defeated fellow Maine House member Mike Sobolewski. Theriault will face 3-term incumbent Democratic Congressman Jared Golden in Maine's 2nd congressional district. The district is the site of a shooting that killed 18 in Lewiston in October. And finally over to Ohio, where Republican State Senator Michael Rulli won a special election Tuesday for a U.S. House seat that has sat vacant for months. The victory expands the GOP's narrow majority in the congressional chamber. Rulli defeated Democrat Michael Kripchak to fill the remainder of Republican Bill Johnson's unexpired term. Kripchak served in the Air Force and has done stints as an actor. He currently works at a local restaurant. The two face off again November 5th for a full 2-year congressional term that begins in January. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
President Biden gets some good news. 3 groups representing older Americans endorsed him today for a 2nd term as president.
The National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, the Social Security Works PAC, and the Bipartisan National United Committee to Protect Pensions all said they would back Biden in 2024.
The endorsements follow the January endorsement of Biden by the nearly 4.5 million member Alliance for Retired Americans. The committee said Biden had worked to protect seniors' earned benefits.
The campaign on Tuesday launched Seniors for Biden-Harris. That's a grassroots program to energize voters 65 and up.
It has more than a dozen events planned, from bingo nights and pickleball tournaments to appearances by senior administration officials. Turning to election security, a Bridgeport city councilman and a Democratic Party official have been charged with illegally handling absentee ballots. Alfredo Castillo and Democratic Vice Chairwoman Wanda Jeter-Pataky were arrested for their alleged actions in the 2019 mayoral primary. The chief state's attorney emphasized the importance of election integrity. 2 campaign workers were also charged. All 4 face accusations including tampering with witnesses and misrepresenting voting eligibility. Mayoral candidate John Gomez called the arrests long overdue, highlighting ongoing issues with election fraud. The State Elections Enforcement Commission is still investigating Bridgeport's elections.
And voters in North Dakota have approved an initiative to bar candidates for the U.S. House or Senate if they were to turn 81 years old during their term. Some legal scholars say the state age limit for congressional seats is unconstitutional. The oldest member of North Dakota's congressional delegation is 67-year-old Republican Senator John Hoeven. The Supreme Court ruled in 1995 that states cannot set qualifications for Congress beyond those listed in the Constitution. Candidates must be at least 25 to serve in the House, 30 in the Senate, and 35 to become president. However, the Constitution does not set maximum age limits for these government offices. Initiative Chairman Jared Hendricks said the measure aims to avoid cognitive and other age-related issues.
The House is expected to vote today on a resolution holding Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress. It's for refusing to turn over audio recordings of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Robert Hur.
Hur investigated Biden's handling of classified material and declined to bring charges. On Tuesday, the House Rules Committee passed a resolution along party lines setting up a floor vote.
The dispute between House Republicans and the executive branch began after Biden asserted executive privilege over the files.
Democrats are against efforts to hold Garland in contempt. They say the transcript of the interview is already public, and they accuse Republicans of targeting Garland after failed investigations into Biden.
With their razor-thin majority in the House, Republicans can only afford a few defections on this vote.
Senate Democrats are set to push for Supreme Court ethics legislation today. Some lawmakers spoke about the bill at a roundtable discussion yesterday.
Court in the land today has the lowest ethical standards, and yet they are the only jurists in the federal system who are traditionally given the honorific justice.
Why was the threat of women having freedom powerful enough to bring down our whole system of judicial ethics and cripple one of the three co-equal branches of government?
Disclose what the facts are about what he knew about his wife's insurrection activities.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse introduced the Supreme Court Ethics Recusal and Transparency Act. It aims to enforce an ethics code for Supreme Court.
Strong Republican opposition is expected to block the bill. The legislation calls for an enforceable ethics code, recusal processes, and a review panel for ethics complaints.
Republicans, including Senator Lindsey Graham, argued these efforts are purely partisan.
Despite anticipated obstruction, Democrats stress the importance of addressing Supreme Court ethics reforms.
And up ahead, the state of Washington moves to strengthen abortion access at hospitals ahead of a Supreme Court decision. More on the governor's actions.
Montana and Texas are suing the Health and Human Services Secretary. They say a new rule forces doctors to perform surgeries and procedures on minors that are illegal in their states.
And according to a court filing, 4 more states have decided to join in the U.S. government's lawsuit against tech giant Apple. More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
Do you know that Cars for Compassion is the best way to donate your car? Through this non-profit program, you can not only help us keep bringing the world independent and daringly truthful journalism, but also significantly impact the life of somebody who needs a vehicle. The Epoch Times fights misinformation and big tech censorship by being independent and unbound to advertisers. Every single contribution to Cars for Compassion is a powerful endorsement of our unwavering mission. All you have to do is go to carsforcompassion.org and let us know about your car, and we'll schedule a pickup time and email you a tax-deductible receipt. To do this, just click the link below. Support truth, compassion, and hope. Donate your car right now at www.carsforcompassion.org.
imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Is it time yet?
It's time.
Let's start for dinner.
Oh, terrific.
Donating pet food is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
We're in the nation's capital asking the important questions so that you're in the know. Join us daily, Monday through Friday, on the Capitol Report on NTD News.
Good to have you back with us. A wildfire is raging on the south side of Twin Lakes in Colorado. The blaze ignited on Tuesday, and eyewitness footage is revealing the extent of its impact.
Crews are striving to contain the blaze, and local media reports show that pre-evacuation orders have been issued.
According to the U.S. Forest Service, the wildfire has already burned at least 165 acres within just a day. It's still unclear what sparked it.
Fortunately, there have been no reports of injuries or fatalities so far. An air tanker is now dropping fire retardant on the area to help firefighters battle the flames.
Through the positioning of houses, the nearby water body, brush, and hills, Reuters was able to confirm the location of the video with a matched file and satellite imagery of the area. Authorities say a gunman shot 3 people at a food court in downtown Atlanta before a police officer then shot him.
I was coming out of the break room, and my manager pushed me back in and said, "Get down, get down, get down." Me and like 5 other coworkers. And we all holding each other, and you know what I'm saying, shielding each other, making sure each other okay. Where it was so scary. My thoughts was I was never gonna make it home to my son, and that scared me. And my heart was beating so fast. My coworkers' heart was beating so fast. My managers, we closed the gates, we closed everything, everybody left.
A couple of us were still back, like looking around the corner just to see what was going on. He was kind of like scoping the place around to figure out who else to shoot. So then the police started coming in a bit by bit, and then that's where they let up with him there. He was on the ground, the police were surrounding him. He had it seemed as though they fired at him because he was on the ground, but his hand was kind of next to the gun, but it wasn't. So it was like they were just telling him to stay as he was. Going to the entrance where the pizza places and the Mexican restaurant, there was blood all over.
Police say all 4 people who were shot Tuesday afternoon at the Peachtree Center food court are expected to survive, including the suspect.
During a news conference, Mayor Andre Dickens praised the responding officer who wounded the gunman. He said things could have been much worse.
The Peachtree Center is a complex of office towers and an underground mall, just blocks from several hotels that are popular venues for Atlanta's busy convention business.
Thieves are increasingly targeting EV charging stations intent on stealing the cables, which contain highly conductive copper wiring. The price of copper is nearing a record high on global markets. This means criminals can earn significant amounts of money by selling the stolen material.
In their effort to convert more Americans to electric vehicles, U.S. automakers now face a new obstacle: broken down chargers.
We unfortunately have seen a little bit of an uptick in vandalism of late. So vandalism in this sense is we're seeing our cables being cut at specific locations and leaving the entire site really inoperable. and requiring us to rapidly rush out there, replace cables at quite an expense.
Electrify America runs the nation's second largest network of direct current fast chargers. According to the company, 2 years ago, you might experience a cable cut perhaps every 6 months at one of its charging stations. But through May of this year, the figure reached over 100.
We have folks that don't have home charging that are relying exclusively on our network to use their EVs, again, to take their kids to school or get to work or get to medical appointments. And so it's very impactful when a whole station is down due to vandalism.
Stations run by Tesla have been hit by thieves in Seattle, Oakland, and Houston.
Vandalizing happens everywhere, so I think it's a thing we have to get used to.
To be honest, this is a new trend for us down here. So once that trend began, once we noticed it, when the very first one happened, I personally went out to the scene.
Police in Houston hadn't seen any cable thefts up until a month ago. The city has now recorded 8 or 9 thefts of cables stolen from a charger at a charging station.
Democratic Governor Jay Inslee announces that Washington will clarify its law to specify that hospitals need to provide abortions if needed to stabilize patients. The move comes ahead of a Supreme Court ruling on whether states can ban abortions during some medical emergencies. While there are no reports of such denied abortions in Washington, Inslee says he wants to ensure hospitals offer the procedures if deemed necessary. Many Republican states have restricted abortion access since Roe v. Wade was overturned. Washington, however, has taken steps to protect access, including stocking abortion medications and increasing funding for abortion clinics. The state has also seen a 50% increase in out-of-state patients seeking abortions.
And Montana and Texas are suing Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra. They're challenging a new rule requiring states to fund cross-sex procedures through Medicaid. The regulation also mandates providers to offer such services even if state law prohibits them. The lawsuit aims to block the rule, which works by expanding non-discrimination protections under the Affordable Care Act to include gender identity.
The Attorneys General of Montana and Texas argue that it's an unconstitutional attempt to override state law.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton called the medical procedures experimental and dangerous.
The rule's implementation begins in July 2024. HHS defends it as a step towards inclusive health care.
And next, a private plane carrying 5 men disappeared decades ago on a snowy Vermont night. Now, 53 years later, experts believe they've found the wreckage of the long-lost jet in Lake Champlain. Shortly after departing from the Burlington Airport for Providence, Rhode Island on January 27, 1971, the corporate jet disappeared.
The people on board included 2 crew members and 3 employees of a Georgia development company.
Last month, underwater searcher Gary Kozak and a team found wreckage of a jet with the same custom paint scheme near where the plane had disappeared. Before that, at least 17 searches failed to find the lost plane.
Although relatives say they feel grateful and relieved that the plane has been found, the discovery also reopens old wounds and more questions. The U.S. flag has represented the American spirit at its highest and lowest points for centuries, from triumph when it was hoisted over Iwo Jima in World War II to resolve when it was raised at Ground Zero after 9/11.
Wabaka, a suburb north of Milwaukee, claims to have celebrated the first Flag Day in 1885. A local school teacher assigned to students to write essays about what the flag means.
June 14th marks the day in 1777 when Congress decreed the flag's design.
Community, Wabaka, opens its arms every year on June 14th, or the second Sunday in June in our case, and says all are welcome. You're all welcome to come and celebrate the flag.
What the flag means to me is that it means our freedom in our country and how we're so blessed to be here.
In 1949, it became a federal observance, and Wabaka has celebrated it on the second Sunday, as you heard, in June for 78 years now.
The celebration consists of a parade, patriotic music, and readings of winning essays about the flag's meaning written by school children from around the country.
Graduating seniors everywhere expect mixed emotions at their commencement ceremony.
But dozens graduating from Newtown High School in Connecticut are carrying the emotional burden of surviving one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history.
It was almost 12 years ago when the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings occurred. 20 first graders and 6 educators were killed in December of 2012. The 6 and 7-year-old survivors of the traumatic event are now graduating high school. About 60 members of the graduating class survived and are still struggling with their feelings.
And so going into graduation, we all have very mixed emotions, trying to be excited for ourselves and this accomplishment that we've worked so hard for, but also those who aren't able to share it with us who should have been able to.
The shooting took away their friends' young lives and also robbed them of something else.
The shooting was kind of like our most core memory growing up. And I think that took away a lot of the joy that we could have experienced when we were 6 years old. And I can't really remember many times before the shooting. So in that sense, it really did take over those really innocent times, and it really forced us to grow up so fast when we didn't need to.
Many of the survivors say they continue to live with the trauma of that day. Loud noises still cause them to jump out of their seats, and some always keep an eye on a room's exits. Many spent years in therapy for post-traumatic stress, depression, and anxiety. But some students now have lofty goals to help others and make a positive difference in society.
But I think that for me, something bigger needed to come out of it, or else it would have been all for nothing.
It's a way to feel like you're doing something, because we're fighting for change, and we're really not going to stop until we get it.
Of the 5 interviewed here, 1 plans on becoming a therapist, 2 plan on becoming civil rights lawyers, and 2 will continue to advocate for gun policy changes and ending gun-related violence.
Amazon contract drivers want more benefits. They say they are minimum wage employees who should have overtime rights. And so on Tuesday, more than 15,000 of them filed arbitration claims against the company. Flex drivers are contract workers who deliver same-day packages for Amazon. Right now, the e-commerce giant classifies them as independent contractors who earn between $18 to $25 an hour. But lawyers for the drivers say Amazon only pays the drivers for a predetermined block. So if a driver books a 3-hour block, they only get paid for those hours, even if deliveries take more time. And workers want to change that. So why arbitration and not just a flat-out lawsuit? Well, drivers had to sign an agreement with Amazon that forbids them from taking legal action.
And 4 more states have joined the U.S. government's landmark antitrust suit against Apple. According to a court filing yesterday, Indiana, Massachusetts, Nevada, and Washington have joined the lawsuit. That brings the total number of states to 19, plus the District of Columbia. The U.S. government and the states sued Apple in March. They accused the iPhone maker of illegally monopolizing the smartphone market. The filing comes a day after Apple announced artificial intelligence enhancements to its mobile and desktop operating systems at its annual developers conference. And thousands of Mexicans have deserted their small town of Tila. They're fleeing an intensive 3-day siege by heavily armed men, leaving it a ghost town. The people are still too afraid to return, despite government troops now patrolling the empty streets. All of the town's inhabitants fled their homes. Some took government buses to nearby shelters. Around 4,000 people live there.
Heavily armed men arrived in Tila in trucks and began shooting at houses, businesses, and setting buildings on fire. The violence lasted 3 days. That's when the army arrived.
State authorities have since said some 5,000 troops have been deployed to the area and 6 suspects detained. Here's what a local said about the incident.
They burned my 2 houses, a lodging I have there because I live off this. They also burned my 2 vehicles, so I was now left in the street, the work done for 60 years.
The government says the violence in Tila resulted from a local land dispute. Residents complain that organized crime groups have long been extorting them and would punish those who did not pay up.
Locals reported growing violence over recent years, as well as an increase in drug trafficking and extortion.
The area has become the site of a turf war between the powerful Jalisco New Generation cartel and the Sinaloa cartel. People are increasingly fleeing the violence and extortion. And Colombia's national police on Tuesday said it seized almost 390 pounds of cocaine hidden inside a shipment of coconuts bound to Spain from the Dominican Republic. Police sniffer dogs found the drugs during an inspection of a container at Cartagena port. 18 tons of coconuts were inside it.
According to police, the coconuts had been drilled into and the cocaine mixed into the coconut water. The mixture was then put back into the fruits and sealed with wooden splinters.
An investigation is underway, and Colombian police said they had alerted authorities in the Dominican Republic, Europe, and the United States. And up ahead, efforts to push for a ceasefire deal in Gaza continue. Hear what Secretary of State Antony Blinken has to say now that Hamas has responded.
At least 40 people are dead in the Middle East in Kuwait today. That's after a fire broke out in a residential building. More on what Kuwait officials are saying.
Italian authorities are probing factories that supply major fashion brands. The concern ties into working conditions there. More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
This is it, the culmination of everything our young athlete has worked for these past months. He's filled with determination. You can see it in his face. Is today the day he overcomes? And here we go. There is no defense in the world that will keep him at bay. He's on fire. Nothing can stop him. Watch him as he heads towards the goal. Oh, he's blocked hard, but that doesn't stop him. He's a warrior. He's back up. His eyes are on the goal. He's set up for the shot. He shoots. Goal!
Achieving goals like this is only possible with the monthly support of people just like you.
Please call the number on your screen right now and give your monthly support to Shriners Hospitals for Children so other children can reach their goals too.
If you give just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, we will send you your very own Love to the Rescue blanket as a reminder of the love you're giving us. Because of monthly support of people like you, nothing is stopping me from achieving my goals.
And here we go. There is no defense in the world that will keep him at bay. He's going left. Oh, he fakes right and continues. Look at those moves. He takes the shot. Goal! Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, call again or go to loveshriners.org to give right away. Your monthly gift helps kids achieve their goals. Goal!
These are all farmers. Maybe
no,
not this
not
one.
A farm anymore.
But here is a farm, right?
No, there's also not a farm anymore.
All these people shut down because of the government policies?
Yeah.
The government wants to control the food. So we don't eat meat, but we eat insect.
As the price of staples goes through the roof, people will say, I can't afford a steak anymore. So, all right, I'll eat your stupid crickets.
The glory of piano masterpieces from the Baroque, Classical, and Romantic periods. New Tang Dynasty Television invites you to join the 2024 NTD International Piano Competition. Together, we preserve and revitalize the art of authentic classical piano music. October 14th to the 19th at the Kaufman Music Center in New York City. Apply now at piano.ntdtv.com.
Welcome back. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is continuing his Middle East trip to push for a ceasefire deal in Gaza.
He met with the Prime Minister of Qatar, which is a key mediator, after Hamas terrorists responded to the proposal.
We were waiting on one response, and that was the response from Hamas. And as the Prime Minister said, last night we received a response. Hamas has proposed numerous changes to the proposal that was on the table. We discussed those changes last night with Egyptian colleagues and today with the Prime Minister. Some of the changes are workable, some are not.
Blinken didn't specify what changes Hamas proposed, but said a number of them go beyond positions that had previously been taken and accepted.
Qatar's Prime Minister is also pushing for the deal, saying he's not endorsing one party over the other, but wants peace and stability in the region.
Blinken added that the U.S. and its partners are working on a post-war plan. They'll put forward proposals for key elements of the day-after plan in the coming weeks.
Blinken's visit to Qatar comes as Israel announced it has killed one of Hezbollah's most senior commanders in southern Lebanon on Tuesday. The Israeli military says the terrorist group launched over 200 rockets at Israel today in response to the commander's death. At least 49 people are dead in Kuwait today after a fire broke out in a building that houses workers. The country's deputy prime minister visited the site.
Unfortunately, the greed of the property owners is what leads to these matters. I will call the director of municipalities, and we will talk to all property owners. Any property violation will be removed early morning.
Reports say scores of workers were living in the building. It's not clear yet which nationality the victims belong to.
Kuwait, like other Persian Gulf countries, has a large community of immigrant workers who far outnumber the local population.
The nation of some 4 million people is slightly smaller than the U.S. state of New Jersey, but it has the world's 6th largest known oil reserves.
A nonprofit in southern Italy is bringing people together to fight the mafia. Founded in 1994, the group has become the biggest non-state actor fighting Italian organized crime. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more.
The women challenging the power of the mafia often find themselves isolated, since the criminal organizations are deeply woven into society. Nonprofit Libera is on the front lines in Puglia, the heel of Italy's boot, to help. It transforms properties seized from mafia bosses into community centers and uses the land to grow products to sell.
Here, we are in the historic center of Messagne, the first capital culture in Puglia, the Italian capital of culture. And this is the Libera Terra workshop, which is part of a network of stores, but not only stores precisely. It's for justice, to promote what is cultivated and produced on assets confiscated from the mafia.
When Pacoca was a child, bombs left by the local mafia exploded in her school overnight. The parents of the school unified against the threat. Her childhood drove her to actively oppose the mafia instead of remaining silent. Today, Pacoca runs the Libera store at the center of Messagne.
For years, Messagne was the capital of the Sacra Corona Unita, the mafia of the south of Puglia, of Salento. In recent years, through a process of enhancement and regeneration of the city, has managed to restore new life and new meaning, even to places that were once impossible for the citizens of the community of Messagne to live in.
Her shop sells olive oil, pasta, and tomato sauces made from crops grown on property confiscated from the Sacra Corona Unita. Each bottle of wine is named for a local victim of the mafia. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And next, we have some short headlines from France, Spain, and other European countries. French President Emmanuel Macron says dissolving the parliament and announcing a snap election is the only way forward. That's after France's far right pummeled his own party in the EU Parliament election.
Macron is urging rival parties on both sides to join him in forging a democratic alliance against Marine Le Pen's right-wing party.
The president acknowledged making mistakes. He says the French had expressed their indignation but felt they were not being heard. Hungary has agreed not to block NATO from giving support to Ukraine, but the country won't provide any personnel or funds to help Kyiv.
At a summit in Washington next month, NATO members are expected to agree on a new system for providing more support to Ukraine.
NATO makes all its decisions by consensus, effectively giving all 32 allies the right to veto. Hungary previously opposed more aid for Ukraine. The European Union is reportedly proposing sanctions on Russian oil shipping company Sovcomflot. That's in a move to limit the Kremlin's ability to finance its war against Ukraine. Bloomberg News reported on the plans, citing a document.
The move would follow similar measures imposed by the U.S. on the company earlier this year. Sovcomflot used to be one of the world's leading tanker operators.
It transported over 70 million tons of oil in 2023. That's mainly to the markets of China, India, and the Mediterranean. Heavy rains yesterday caused severe flooding in many parts of the Spanish island of Mallorca.
The inclement weather also left the island's airports soaking.
Several flights were grounded as a result. Footage showed puddles inside the building while roads were flooded outside the airport.
The heavy rain has stopped and no major injuries were reported.
A Polish climber was detained in Argentina as he attempted to scale one of the capital's tallest buildings. Marcin Bono was climbing the exterior of Buenos Aires' 30-story Globant tower without safety equipment.
Wearing an Argentina soccer jersey, Bono managed to climb 28 of the 30 floors of the tower in downtown Buenos Aires. The building is 410 feet high. He was intercepted by a rescue team, which put him in a safety harness and forced him down.
The Buenos Aires official says the climber is now in custody. He said he'll ask the courts to sentence Bono to pay for the entire operation. The official said locals should not have to bear the cost of his, quote, recklessness.
Bono is well known for climbing urban landmarks such as the Montparnasse Tower in Paris and the Louis I Bridge in Portugal.
On July 6, 2021, celebrity crime reporter Peter R. de Vries was shot in a busy Amsterdam street and died 9 days later. This raised concerns about the ability of the criminal underworld to eliminate prominent public figures who are seen as threats.
Prosecutors had demanded life sentences for the Dutch man who shot de Vries, as well as for 2 men from Poland who had been charged with planning the murder and trying to help the assassin escape.
3 other men received up to 14 years for aiding the murder, which the court said had gravely shocked Dutch society. None of the suspects made statements during the trial.
De Vries was famous for his television programs in which he often worked with victims' families and pursued unsolved cases.
The Justice Department sentenced 2 Texas men to 45 months in prison yesterday. One was a Chinese citizen and the other was a U.S. citizen.
A U.S. jury in November convicted the pair of trying to sell Iranian oil to a Chinese refinery.
The department said that's in violation of sanctions imposed by Washington and of conspiracy to commit money laundering. The European Union said today that it would impose tariffs of up to 38% on Chinese electric vehicles coming into the bloc. The decision follows Washington's tariff hikes on Chinese EVs, set at 100%.
The Commission has also pre-disclosed today the level of provisional countervailing duties it would impose on imports of battery electric vehicles from China.
The Vice President of the EU Commission said China's unfair trade practices have injured European automakers, adding the bloc has reached out to Chinese authorities to discuss a solution.
The EU's auto sector accounts for nearly 13 million jobs. Last year, the bloc imported over $11 billion worth of Chinese electric cars, an increase of $1.6 billion from the year before.
Behind the increase are China's much lower prices, which EU automakers can't compete with. When the EU leaders raised concerns about Beijing's unfair subsidies last week, the Chinese Commerce Minister dismissed the accusations and urged the bloc to support trade.
Last October, the EU Commission launched an anti-subsidy investigation into China's EV supply chain.
And according to a Reuters source, prosecutors in Milan are investigating the supply chain of around a dozen more fashion brands. The decision comes after a unit of France's LVMH in Italy was placed under court administration as part of a worker exploitation probe. On Monday, a Milan court appointed a commissioner to run an LVMH-owned maker of Dior-branded handbags. An investigation into 4 of its suppliers based around Italy's fashion capital uncovered illegal working conditions.
Prosecutors allege workers were employed for extended hours, working often into the night and during holidays. Some of the staff slept where they worked, had no regular contracts, and had illegally immigrated to Italy.
This is the third similar decision in this year by the Milan court.
Hong Kong's government canceled the passports of 6 overseas activists today under a new set of national security laws. Prosecutors accused the 6 pro-democracy activists of colluding with external forces. Among them is former lawmaker Nathan Law.
Police offered rewards of close to $130,000 last year for information leading to their arrests. Authorities have banned anyone from providing them funds or doing business with them in Hong Kong. Doing so could carry a penalty of up to 7 years in prison.
The new law, called Article 23, comes on top of a Beijing-imposed national security law from 2020. That law has been used to jail pro-democracy activists and shut down media outlets. Crimes for subversion, collusion, sedition, theft of state secrets, and espionage now carry jail terms of several years to life.
And coming up, the world's deepest swimming pool is furnished like a city with sunken cars, motorbikes, and even arcade games. Go on a dive with us in Dubai.
Japanese electric car maker Aspark claims one of its new models is the world's fastest electric vehicle. Find out more about the EV's speed record when we return.
After an entire year of preparation, one extreme sports athlete paraglides off a giant Ferris wheel in Vienna. More in just a moment on that on NTD News.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
My dad's name was David. He always talked about getting life insurance, and now it's too late.
No one was expecting my husband Dave to suffer from a heart attack. We didn't have life insurance. We thought we had more time.
Don't be Dave, and don't wait until it's too late to get the life insurance coverage you need. And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Call now to get affordable life insurance.
Just call
800-494-1562.
If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam, no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Remember, don't be Dave. Call now.
Call now.
800-494-1562.
You know you don't have to wear your PT gear anymore, right?
It's comfortable.
So how's civilian life treating you?
It's fine.
When I got out, I didn't want to admit that there was anything wrong because I felt like a failure. And then I realized, there's nothing to be ashamed of. So I started talking to someone. Maybe you are fine, but if you're not, it's okay.
Thank you.
If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach. For the day's top headlines and the news you need to know, tune in right here to NTD Evening News.
Until recently, Dubai City may not have been a top destination for scuba divers, but that's changed since some divers created the world's deepest swimming pool.
It's furnished like a city and fitted with sunken cars, motorbikes, and even arcade games. Let's take a look.
Welcome to the world's deepest swimming pool, located in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. It's been verified by Guinness World Records as the deepest swimming pool for diving.
It's the world's deepest facility, 60 meters, 200 feet, and it's the world's largest deep facility at 15 million liters, nearly 4 million gallons. And then there's a range of technology, a whole sunken city to explore.
In the depths, divers can find sunken cars, motorbikes, pool tables, and arcades. The technology used means people could listen to whale sounds or even their favorite songs while diving. The pool has become a popular attraction with advanced divers and non-divers wanting to experience going underwater.
Something this grand doesn't really happen very much in my industry of scuba diving, and it was such a neat way for somebody that's so passionate about the underwater world to create an environment that allows people of all types to explore and feel safe and comfortable while they share in the passion of an environment that I love so deeply.
Scuba diving is increasing in popularity in the UAE, with a large dive community actively teaching and running trips in different emirates. The country's location by the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman has created many diving spots. Deep Dive Dubai has also become somewhat of a social media attraction, with influencers posting videos of their dives and newly engaged couples taking their engagement photos underwater in the pool. Dubai has attracted attention for its many unconventional Guinness World Records, and it's adding this to the list.
Dramatic video shows the moment a deer crashed through the windshield of a public bus. Take a look. The bus was traveling along this busy street in Warwick, Rhode Island on Monday when the deer seemingly appeared out of nowhere. That's when it leapt into the front windshield of the bus and landed inside, bringing the shattered glass with it.
You can see the deer fly directly into at least one stunned passenger while others scramble to get out of the way. Officials said 6 passengers were on the bus at the time.
3 were reportedly injured. The deer appears to have survived the crash, but officials didn't provide an update on its condition.
And in lighter news, dogs are living it up at a Dog People, a private members dog park for canines in Los Angeles. Dogs and their owners socialize and enjoy high-end amenities in what's been dubbed Soho House for dogs.
At this Los Angeles members-only club, scoring an invite is all about who you know.
The humans are a guest of their dog who is the member.
This is Dog People, a private dog park where canines and their owners can socialize while enjoying high-end amenities. Alex Esguerra and Liam Underwood founded the club 2 years ago after becoming frustrated with what they say is a shortage of clean and safe dog parks in Los Angeles.
Getting a membership at Dog People, sure, you get access to the park, but you get access to so much more. We have parties here, we have events here, programming, we have yoga classes. We've had 100 tons of snow dumped into the park because most of our dog members had never seen snow before, we found out. So we're like, okay, why don't we bring the snow to them?
Memberships cost $120 a month. And like other clubs, not just anyone can join.
Hi, bud.
Safety Operations Manager Keitel Frankel says dogs go through a temperament test first.
They're not jumping through hoops or having to stand on their back legs or anything like that. We're so experienced in seeing those kind of orange and red flag behaviors that can kind of build a picture of a dog that isn't necessarily going to be a good fit.
Once in, the canines get access to a clean and luxurious place to hang out. So-called referees keep an eye out in case any of the dogs get too excited. And for the humans, there's a lounge, bar, work areas, and social events. Co-owner Esguerra says it's been called the Soho House for Dogs, a play on the name of a popular private members club.
I think that they relate the two because they imagine Soho House as a membership club that really invests in their people, and they create community and programming and hospitality, to the finest degree to kind of give people, a different type of lifestyle. We want to do the same for dogs.
While the focus is on the dogs, their humans say they're happy to sit and stay for a while too.
It's facilitated a lot of things for me, business, personal. Yeah,
I met a really pretty girl here.
I mean, I'm from LA, so everything that like kind of people judge about LA, I think is like what makes LA so unique. I have so many friends that are members of like Soho House and other like social clubs. It's kind of a similar thing. Even though it's for the dogs, it's also for the people.
And before we leave, a daunting challenge in the sky. Extreme sports athlete Roland Brunnenbauer has successfully paraglided off the giant Ferris wheel of Vienna. After completing the challenge last week, the 31-year-old from Austria said that he had wanted to push himself a bit more.
Brunnenbauer is a passionate paraglider. It took him a year to prepare and calculate the wind conditions for the flight.
I wanted to push myself a little bit more, and yeah, I thought to do something in the capital of Austria. And yeah, that was already, I knew already where I will take off from. It was the Ferris wheel. So yeah, this was where I start growing this project and working on it a lot. So, and today was the day we finally were able to do it.
Brunnenbauer's first attempt of the day saw the specialized paraglider fall sideways.
But he reset it and then took off from the 213-foot-tall Ferris wheel, and he successfully touched down on the landing site. Japanese electronic car maker Aspark is calling its new Owl SP600 the world's fastest electric vehicle. The hypercar can hit speeds of more than 270 miles per hour.
According to top speed rankings in March, the Rimac Navarre electric vehicle was the fastest with a top speed of 258 miles per hour.
Aspark's Owl vehicle set other speed records last year as well.
The Japanese company said it had commissioned Manifattura Automobili Torino in Italy to work on the Owl SP600. Aspark called it an evolution of the original Aspark Owl.
Based in Osaka, Aspark has been working on its Owl electric ultra performance cars since 2015.
And this year's Independence Day hot dog eating competition will proceed without America's perennial champion, Joey Chestnut. Organizers say this is due to a contract dispute. Chestnut has been competing since 2005 and hasn't lost since 2015. He knocked down 62 franks and buns in 10 minutes at last year's Nathan's famous 4th of July hot dog eating contest.
According to Major League Eating event organizer George Shea, Chestnut is stepping back from the contest due to a contract dispute.
Shea says Chestnut struck a deal with a competing brand, which is a red line for Nathan's sponsored event. According to him, the dispute came down to exclusivity, not money.
Chestnut did not immediately respond to a request for comment made through his website.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
And be sure to stick around for NTD Newsroom at 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll cover more stories from the U.S. and around the world.
The glory of piano master.